Welcome into the Week 11 matchup preview show with myself, Dave Kluge, and my good friend Jeff Bell. We are going to go through every single Week 11 matchup today, talking about all the things you need to know. We're going to kind of use injuries as a jumping off point to talk about these matchups. Then we'll talk into the starts, sits, sleepers, busts, everything that we're going to be paying attention to in these games. Jeff, first things first, last night, TreVeyon Henderson, the breakout is real. We saw the big 2-touchdown game a couple of weeks ago. I think a lot of people were anticipating maybe a little bit of a cool off because a lot of those came out explosive plays. Well, we didn't see the explosive plays yesterday. We did see 3 touchdowns for TreVeyon Henderson and nearly 100 yards. What do you think happens now going forward with TreVeyon Henderson when Ramondre Stevenson is back?
Probably Ramondre Stevenson touches the ball more than we would like, but TreVeyon Henderson touches the ball a lot more than he is kind of where it comes down. I think that we all have been waiting for the breakout for TreVeyon Henderson season to start, and it seems to be there. Definitely, like you mentioned, he's bottled up a little bit. You can definitely see the explosion that TreVeyon Henderson possesses. And 3 touchdowns, involvement in the passing game, every single thing that we would want to see. And frustrating that it took the injuries that it took to get to that point, because part of you wonders if Terrell Jennings was still healthy, would this be a 50-50 split with Henderson and Terrell Jennings? But we got what we wanted last night. I was ahead of consensus, and I'm proud of that for Henderson, because when I saw where he was ranked, I thought it was aggressively high. But then when I broke it down, I said, well, yeah, I get it. I'll put him up there. And we got a good Thursday night game for the Patriots, at least, to start some things off.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about it a lot, that Mike Vrabel is like an old school coach. He's going to coach these players hard. He wants to bring the best out of them. I couldn't help but notice, though, that Mike Vrabel seemed to be having like a little bit of fun. Did you see after that 3rd touchdown, like he goes to dap him up and he's got his tongue out? Like that is not like a Bill Belichick type of coach right there. And I think that he, learned some things from Bill Belichick, but Mike Vrabel is still going to be Mike Vrabel. And you could tell that he was like having fun. He likes seeing the breakout. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. Outside of that, everybody else did what they were supposed to. Like Drake May looked hyper efficient again. Like there are so many times where I just thought he was going to take a sack, and then somehow he would just like pop out of the pocket and just like hit a receiver wide open 25 yards downfield. He looks unbelievable. The ball spread. We saw Stephon Diggs with a nice bounce back game, his 3rd game with 100+ yards this season. Any other major takeaways from last night, Jeff?
I mean, as a person that was not cheering for the Patriots for reasons, I did think it was interesting that it seemed to be one of those games that anytime anything bad happened, a piece of yellow fabric hit the ground with the Jets. But, it is what it is. Sometimes you see some of those games, but definitely, I think from the Jet side, I'm going to make a plea to the people here, because nothing at all indicated that we were going to see the entire shift to Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie as the main receivers there. I mean, I dig into usage every single week, and it has been Tyler Johnson and Arian Smith as the guys getting the snaps. So that switch, if you're out there and your reasoning is something other than, I mean, come on, bro, they just traded for him. Of course they're going to play. Like, if you have verifiable sources that were reporting that it was going to be Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie, please share them with me so that I can be more informed in this and I can have a better rankings and all those things, because that was the biggest story, I think, coming out of the Jets side was, and the other part of it, we saw Adonai Mitchell just completely benched and relegated in Indianapolis. And how many people even realize that John Mechie was on the Eagles, much less now the Jets, and they go out and they dominate wide receiver targets. Jeremy Ruckert's leading targets, and for all the talk about Justin Fields and all the struggles, I mean, it's malpractice of what the Jets have put out on the field around Justin Fields. And, we're out of Justin Fields had his last good chance to be a starting quarterback. Now he's probably relegated to the backup quarterback portion of his career. Like, it seems like a lot of quarterbacks are at a crossroads right now. But yeah, seeing the talent that he didn't have around him, and you do want to see Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie out there as opposed to guys that Tyler Johnson. I mean, nothing against Tyler Johnson, and I'm sure he's got a very nice family and all those things, but you do want to see the young receivers.
And part of me wonders if we're going to see much Adonai Mitchell going forward after he like really squandered the opportunity last night, like just multiple drops, like just concentration issues, which is probably why Indianapolis chose to move on from him. And then those issues immediately rearing their heads in his, first opportunity with the Jets. But enough of that, Jeff. Let's go ahead and jump into the Week 11 stuff that hasn't happened yet that we get to prognosticate about. Bye weeks, Indianapolis Colts, New Orleans Saints. Be sure to get those guys out of your lineups. And by those guys, I mean Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman. I don't know too many people that are relying on many Saints outside of Chris Olave. But let's go ahead and jump into the games. The first one, we've got another international game. So as we always say on this show, wake up bright and early. Don't put your commissioner in a tough spot. Be an adult, set your lineup, all that good stuff. Washington Commanders and Miami Dolphins facing off against each other in Madrid, Spain at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And the injuries here, we got Chris Rodriguez practicing in full. He's on the injury report with a shoulder injury, but it sounds like he's going to be ready to go. And it sounds like they're planning on using him in a featured role. We'll talk a little bit about that. Terry McLaurin still not practicing. Traylon Burks not practicing. He had a surgery on his finger, and he's going to be out for this week. Jaden Daniels still out. Marcus Mariota is planning to start again. We've got Ben Sinnott dealing with an ankle injury. He's been limited on Thursday. And then for the Dolphins, mostly healthy. We've got Ollie Gordon, who's been on the injury report with an ankle for the last couple of weeks, still on the injury report. We've seen this injury has opened up opportunities for Jalen Wright. Jeff, what's the major thing you're going to be watching in this one? I'm assuming we probably, I mean, I don't want to big brain this too much, but I'm kind of the belief that if the Commanders lose this game, we're not going to see Jaden Daniels again this year. And if they win, then there's going to be some tough decisions the Commanders are going to have to make over the bye.
I mean, the Dolphins really, to me, if this feels like two teams headed different directions, and part of the reason is because the Dolphins were as low as you could get and have bounced back a little bit from that, but they've won 2 of their last 3, beating the Falcons and beating the Bills. And they look like the more explosive side, I think, on this one is my first takeaway with what we're seeing from Jalen Waddle, what we're seeing from Devin Achane. Obviously, they traded Jaden Phillips, but the defense has looked much, much better over the last couple of weeks, actually shutting down the run game as opposed to where we were a couple of weeks ago, going into that smash Bijan Robinson spot that didn't end up being a smash. So I think from where these teams are right now, I would expect the Dolphins to win this game. But we'll see here. I think you're right on the Commander side, but this already feels like a lost season for the Commanders.
Right.
They've got to be looking at this of, can they really get back into it? And then I think the Dolphins have to feel like coming off that Bills win, they're as high as they possibly can be right now.
Yeah, and we've got to remember, like, the Dolphins have 2 nice wins over the last 3 weeks, but they also had like a really tough loss to the Ravens as well. So I think they're just one of these Jekyll and Hyde teams that you never know what you're going to get on a weekly basis. Like we talked about it so much that like you're just firing up every single one of your running backs going up against the Dolphins. And then we saw him put a clamp on Bijan Robinson. Last week, they kind of bottled up James Cook as well. So it's like, Rico Dowdle can go for 250 against him, but then Bijan Robinson can't find any grass. So I guess that's kind of the question I have here is, I talked about it. Chris Rodriguez, there are reports that he is going to be in a featured role. And that's what we saw last week. Before he left the game with a shoulder injury, he was dominating the touches. He was for the entire first drive. He got the touchdown, came out in the second drive. Once he got injured, then we saw Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt coming in. So what are you doing with the Commanders running backs in this matchup? Or do you feel comfortable starting Chris Rodriguez? I don't think Jeremy McNichols and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt are even on the fantasy radar at this point, but given the potential for the upside against this Miami offense, where do you have Chris Rodriguez ranked this week?
Chris Rodriguez, where do I have Chris Rodriguez ranked? Probably not accurately enough.
Got him RB 30 is where I've got him, and like that might feel a little bit low because like this does seem like it could be a potential smash spot, but at the same time, like I can't move him ahead of Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker and some of the other guys that I have there.
Yeah, he's going to be my running back 34 is where he's sitting right now. So that's where I've got him ranked and waiting to see. Earlier in the week, I was waiting to see if he cleared some of the injuries because of that shoulder injury and that holding him out. So that's where I'm going to come in on Rodriguez this week. You're exactly right. Stepping up as the feature back, I think that double-digit touchdowns would be a record, but double-digit touches are in play for Rodriguez. But it is that touchdown. You're counting on him to score a touchdown because we have not seen much of any passing involvement for any of these backs. And you do know that I mean, Jeremy McNichols is going to be on the field. I think Corey Krosky-Merritt's probably going to be on the field too. So you're looking at a three-headed committee in an offense that's struggling, that requires a touchdown. So it's a flex spot start. I'm struggling here at my running back 2 in a hero running back build, or I just need somebody because of these buys type of a start.
Yeah, I think that's basically it. And then for the Dolphins, no injuries to really talk about, and we know what we're getting here, right? Like we're firing up Jalen Waddle as a wide receiver 1. Greg Dulcich, if you're like super desperate and looking for a tight end in your 2 tight end league, you might be looking his way. Outside of that, like we know Malik Washington has his role. If he gets in the end zone, you feel good about that. Devon Achane, you're firing him up. I think the question here is like, has Jalen Wright done enough to take the backup role for Ollie Gordon, or do you think the switch that we've seen over the last couple of weeks is just due to the Ollie Gordon ankle?
Wright looked explosive in the runs last week, and I think that is something to watch this week. We saw it last night with Henderson, the rookie running back coming in that hasn't had a lot of touches. I think if you watch the Patriots game from last week, Kyle Williams had a catch where it was just moving at a different speed, and I think that we're reaching the stretch of the season. We're very much in the stretch of the season where these young players that haven't played a lot are coming in with fresh legs, and it makes a massive difference in these matchups because these guys are beaten down. The guys that have been out there every single week, if you flash back to week 2, week 3, and see the way that guys were moving relative to the way that guys are moving now, it's a major night and day difference. And I think that Kyle Williams touchdown is pretty illustrative, given how fast he was moving relative to how fast defenders usually move. So fresh legs, I think, make a big difference right now. I think Jalen Wright probably some level of feeling like, hey, I had missed my shot, because out of camp, early camp, there was a story that he was going to be in the Ollie Gordon role. He got injured. That allowed Gordon to step in and fall in line there. For Gordon, watching him, like, nothing has made me say that I think he's particularly good. And so that is where that door
type.
opens.
I think they like him because he does different things than Devon
He is,
Achane. But yeah,
he's young, so he's interesting to us. But yes,
Chris Rodriguez. I see a lot of similarities between Ollie Gordon and Chris Rodriguez. Like they do a lot of the same things here. And I know there was a lot of like Devy hype for Ollie Gordon a couple of years ago, and I'm going to get absolutely skewered by the Ollie Gordon lovers out there. But there's a lot of similarities to that game. All right, Jeff. Anything else?
Chris Rodriguez and Ollie Gordon. It's that HR meme where it's like, the same guy giving the stats for Chris Rodriguez, and then the other guy giving here's Ollie Gordon. But
all right, well, let's move on to the next game here, Jeff. We are into Sunday afternoon now. Carolina Panthers at Atlanta Falcons. Rico Dowdle didn't practice on Wednesday, limited on Thursday. Sounds like he is going to be good to go, dealing with a quad injury. And then for Drake London, same thing. Didn't practice on Wednesday, limited on Thursday. They're saying illness/back, so he's dealing with a couple of things here, but seems like he's going to be good to go. So as far as fantasy relevant players here, Jeff, it sounds like we are going to have the full serving. Everybody should be healthy in this one. What do you think is the thing to talk about to start? I mean, Rico Dowdle, we know what we're doing with him. Even if he is healthy, you don't have any pause about starting Rico Dowdle, assuming he's active, right?
No, I mean, there's too much volume at play here for Dowdle, and the Falcons have been a run funnel team. So that there's too much on play here for Dowdle. That being said, I think what the Saints did last week is really interesting and bears monitoring, because the Saints basically said Rico Dowdle is not winning this game and Bryce Young needs to win this game. And I think that it really, because the defensive game plan was so extreme, and because Young struggled so badly, it kind of opened the eyes, I think, for a lot of people around football of what actually Bryce Young has been doing this season, because he's avoided the awkward Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa conversation. He very much needs to be in that conversation of, have we seen enough here in this spot? Do the Panthers need to be looking at other options? I think the 5-4 record sitting in a potential playoff spot kind of took some color off that as well. But what's that?
Yeah, 5-5 now.
I mean last week.
Yeah.
Coming in and being a surprise 5-4 team with the expectation that they would beat the Saints. And then sometimes the game doesn't go the way that we think it's going to go. And that makes us have some, very knee-jerk reactions at times. But to me, I don't think Bryce Young's questions about being the franchise quarterback here is a knee-jerk reaction. under 200 yards every single game except
I
for
know.
that Carolina or that Cardinals comeback attempt in week 3.
And you almost wonder if like a mobile quarterback is what this offense needs. They have such a good offensive line. They've got the
I
run
thought
game under
Bryce Young
control.
was a mobile quarterback.
I mean, he is mobile like a Joe Burrow is mobile, I think. I don't know. I maybe that's not the best comp, but like he can move around the pocket and he can, occasionally pick up the first down when it's 3rd and 4. But I'm talking like a Malik Willis type of quarterback in this offense. I can't imagine like how fun that would be. But again, like I think we're starting to change our expectations for this Panthers team a little bit. Through the first month of the season, it was so easy to look at the target total and the receptions and all those things for Tetero McMillan. And we were ranking him as a back end wide receiver 1, saying like it's only a matter of time before it happens. But now, as we see that the volume isn't changing in this offense and Bryce Young isn't taking that step forward, you're still starting Tetero McMillan, but now we're kind of looking at him as more of like a back end wide receiver 2 than the hopeful wide receiver 1. Of course, for dynasty purposes, like we're looking at this guy as a top 10 guy, but I think looking at a weekly basis, it's just hard to get him up there in rankings.
It absolutely is. And in a lot of spots, you're still putting him in your lineup probably because of the volume still hypothetically is there. I mean, the target share percentage is definitely there. But yeah, we haven't seen, I mean, the 2 touchdowns in the Dallas game was really the only time he's gotten into the end zone. And then just the big yardage days haven't been there. That being said, he's still on pace to break every single Panthers franchise record for rookie receptions and yardage. And that is kind of, we do play that game a little bit where, we are disappointed by production. And then you look at it and it's, well, he's going to break every record. So.
Yeah. And I think this week too, he'll be drawing coverage from AJ Terrell. So I'm looking at my rankings. Like this is the lowest I've had him ranked all season. I've got him at wide receiver 28. So I said low end wide receiver 2. Technically, by the numbers, I've got him more as a high end wide receiver 3. But should be a tough matchup for the Atlanta Falcons. I got to ask you, Jeff, Tyler Algier. Like when we rank him, he just falls into that kind of flex consideration every single week. Looking at what the projected game script could be in this matchup, do you think this is a week that you might feel okay putting Algier in your lineups, or are you just kind of still keeping him as that injury away stash?
He is very night and day in terms of, and he had an island spot last week and got 2 touchdowns there, and that causes the wild reaction because people actually see what's happening as opposed to seeing numbers in a box score. It's been the same story all year long. It's not anything different last week than what has been going on all year long. When it's a positive game script for the Falcons run game, Tyler Algier is very involved. When it's any level of negative game script, he's just not on the field at all. And so I really get very iffy about those types of plays. They're emergency only. I just need somebody to plug in here because for all the scoring 2 touchdown games, you also get the games where he's just standing on the sidelines and you say, I can't believe I played a backup running back. And I think he's still very much a backup running back. I mean, Bijan Robinson didn't get the touchdowns, but he's still dominating snaps. He's still Bijan Robinson. It's just that in an island spot, Algier got 2 touchdowns.
And I think all of these guys like Tyler Algier and Blake Corum and Kyle Monungai, like you want to start them because you see them on the field a lot.
I don't want to start them at all.
Well, like I'm saying, I mean, I've got a lot of hero and 0 RB builds out there where I'm tempted to put them in my lineup. And like when they score a touchdown and I get my 12 points, I'm like, I'm a genius. I knew I should have started them this week. And when they don't, I'm staring at the 2.7 points saying, what was I thinking starting these guys? And I think that's where Tyler Algier falls. Like if you're desperate, you need to put him in your lineup, hope he scores a touchdown.
I feel like when you're looking at those guys, it's one of those things that like August Jeff looked at the team he drafted and said, oh, I'll find running backs through the year. Like, no problem. And then now in November, Jeff's like, what the hell did you do September and October, Jeff? Because I'm supposed to have these plug-in guys that I don't have. But I mean, some of it we've seen healthier running backs across the league is some of it. I think we've seen some more backfield shift towards one player dominating the looks and touches and less of those committee approaches. So that dries up that well a little bit for 0 running back builds and hero running back builds. And yeah, you do get with the Corums and the Algiers are definitely better than you feel better than Nick Chubb at this point about getting those guys in your lineup.
Let's go out to the
I
next
think
game here.
Falcons side real quick. I do want to say this team is way too talented to be 3-6. I don't know what is going
Yeah.
on there. There's been whispers, rumors. I've seen some things put out that Michael Penix is basically calling the offense, which is wild for basically a first-time starting quarterback to be calling the offense, if that's any level of true. I mean, we need Drake London healthy. This should be a spot for Kyle Pitts. The Panthers have been brutalized by tight ends throughout the season. And if London is any level of questionable, then it should be a spot for Kyle Pitts. I'm thankful that Drake London is doing Drake London things, even though Darnell Mooney is on the field. I think that was one of the funniest narratives that I saw going around the splits of pulling the numbers there. But
it came out that he officially broke his collarbone in the preseason. So this whole season, Jeff,
okay.
is only happening because Darnell Mooney isn't 100%. I don't know if
Sure.
you're aware.
I mean,
Jokes
every
aside,
single
though,
training camp report was that Drake May was getting 48% of the targets
Drake
in
London,
practice, or Drake London. I every single time, Dave, every single time.
So here's what I will say about Drake London. I do have a little bit of concern. Like, I'm still starting him, like, regardless where I've got him. But what we saw, like, when he has a clean bill of health, he goes out there and he gives you 150 yards and a touchdown. But when he is ailing a little bit, like we saw this after week 1 for the next month, like he was dealing with that shoulder injury and he wasn't giving us the best production. So that combined with JC Horn in this matchup has me like mildly concerned. I've still got him ranked as like a top 8 wide receiver, but this is one where he might not have the ceiling we've grown accustomed to over the last month or so. Still starting him, but just wanted to, kind of put that out there. Next game I want to talk about, Jeff, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Buffalo Bills. Chris Godwin back at practice. Bucky Irving back at practice. We've also got Dalton Kincaid not practicing, dealing with a hamstring injury now. Khalil Shakir has been limited with ankle and ribs. And then Josh Palmer back at practice, also dealing with a knee and an ankle injury. So we've got to start here by talking about Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving. It doesn't sound like either is going to be back this week. They're just kind of going through the motions in sweatpants at practice, but good to see them back on a practice field and a part of football activities. Going into this week, though, I know a lot of people holding on to Rachaad White are saying, like, I got my one last run with Rachaad White. When the reality is we've seen a split between Rachaad White and Sean Tucker over the last couple of weeks, kind of making both of them fall into that RB3 range for me rather than just, firing Rachaad White up as a plug and play RB1.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of you're right that Irving and Godwin probably won't play, but like, what's the difference between the Bills and Patriots season right now? And it's things like this on, the Patriots played them last week and it's like Rachaad White feels like dust and they're trying to figure out running back solutions and the wide receivers are the wide receiver. And then the Bills would get them the next week and then you'd get Bucky Irving and Chris Godwin back on the field healthy. And like, that's basically been the difference between these two seasons here in the AFC East teams. We're a matter of time before we get Bucky Irving in and he is healthy. He's going to dominate this backfield. We saw Rachaad White get every opportunity that you could hope Rachaad White could get for holding Rachaad White. And it's not quite as bad as Jordan Mason, but it's not really good from what we saw. He's sitting at running back 20 while Bucky Irving has been out of the lineup. So back in running back 2, but
more concerning is that it's just been like a slow trend downward too. It was like RB5 the first week, RB7 the second week, RB12. Like, it has just been this slow march down out of relevance, like where you still want to keep putting him in your lineup, but it just gets tougher to stomach every single week.
Yeah, and I think on the Buck side too, I don't know that any team needed a bye more than the Buccaneers did, because once we get Emeka Egbuka was really struggling prior to that bye, comes back and looks explosive again, puts up big production there. Baker Mayfield was struggling prior to that bye. We get a shootout game script last week, and I think this probably should be a shootout game script from the Buccaneers side as well. Kate Otton's really come on, but the Bills have been good against tight ends, so we'll have to see how that one plays out. But
yeah, a movable force and a unstoppable object, or whatever we say here. I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at here. Like, the Kate Otten has just been smashing for the last few weeks, but the Bills aren't giving up anything to tight ends at all. So I had Andrew Cooper on yesterday, and we were kind of talking about this matchup a little bit, and we kind of joke around that he's the tight end whisperer, and he's got Kate Otten pretty low in his rankings, where a lot of people like, I've got him inside my top 10. I'm firing up in quite a few leagues, but this is a very, very difficult matchup. On the Bill side of the ball, Jeff, we've of course got Dalton Kincaid with another ailment. I mean, it's just this is the story of his career, right? Like since he's come into the league, when he's out there, he's awesome, but it seems like he is just always dealing with something. And then we see these flashes where he comes out and like looks dominant, 100 plus yards, and then he gets hurt, and then he comes back and he's ramped up, and then has another big game, and then he gets hurt again. And like, you look at some of these boom games, and it's great if you got him in best ball, but like in managed leagues, I've seen Dalton Kincaid just sitting on waivers in a bunch of my leagues because like nobody knows when to start him or when these boom games are going to come. A very, very frustrating player this year in fantasy.
A frustrating player in real life too. So
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it is, and he really is. I think on a lot of levels, the key to this Bills offense, the key to this passing game, maybe of the guy that the Bills are really
He's the tight end
struggling.
one, right? Or like the
Yeah,
wide receiver one, I'd say. Like
basically.
he like gets just as many targets as Khalil Shakir and is more efficient with those opportunities.
Yeah, the Bills are not winning against any coverage, but a lot of talk about the lack of separation against man coverage, but they're really struggling against zone coverage. And Dalton Kincaid is kind of their zone buster. They've got the guy that almost the Cole Beasley in this offense, and I think not having him out there, and I mean Dawson Knox has led the team in snaps throughout the season consistently. Jackson Hawes, they like him quite a bit. He's definitely a very strong run blocker, and he's made some plays. But yeah, without Kincaid, I mean, this offense is already a mess. And now you remove Kincaid, who is your struggle target player, basically. I don't know. I mean, this definitely feels like a spot where Josh Allen reminds everybody he's Josh Allen, but we did.
Felt like
I
last
can't
week was
help
gonna
but
be
feel
that
like
spot
we're,
too, and it
well,
didn't
yeah,
happen. Yeah.
I can't help but feel like we're in that where a couple years ago when Patrick Mahomes was out there with Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Sky Moore, and well, the league has figured out Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes is not very good. We were wrong in thinking that Patrick Mahomes is, and then all of a sudden he gets Rasheed Rice and David Worthy, and Patrick Mahomes is back, and it's Josh Allen. You read that body language, you see what's going on out there. It's he's standing, patting the ball in the pocket. Nobody's open, and then chucks it at Jackson Hawes' head because he's frustrated and needs to get the ball out of his hands.
And let me add some context here for any new listeners. Jeff is a Bills fan, and he is commiserating a little bit right here. But no, we are still starting Josh Allen. Still a top 3 fantasy tight end. This is coming from the lens of a Bills fan. But Jeff, I think we covered everything we need to here. I think the last question I might have for you, Baker Mayfield, is he still a guy that you are starting this week? Because we haven't seen, last week, and we talked about it a lot. Like last year, efficiencies all-time high across the board, like lowest interception rate, highest touchdown rate, most yards per game, highest completion percentage. Like they were just white hot last year. And now with all of these injuries, we've seen Baker Mayfield start to cool off a little bit. Is he still like a must-start QB1, or does he kind of fall into that streamer discussion now?
Everybody gets healthy against the Bills defense right now. So.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I still am starting Baker Mayfield, but I've got him lumped into the same tier as JJ McCarthy, Joe Flacco, and Sam Darnold. Like, not the top 5 guy that he was drafted to be in a lot of leagues. All right, let's move on to the next one here, Jeff. The Jaguars at Chargers. Keenan Allen just getting his typical rest day on Thursday, limited participation on Thursday, and he's probably going to be limited in the game as well, based on what we've seen over the last month of the season. Quentin Johnson limited with a shin injury. Lad McConkey limited with an ankle injury. Rondé Gadsden practicing in full with this knee, kind of hamstring. It was like a contusion that he picked up, they're saying. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, Brian Thomas Jr. back at practice. He's been dealing with that high ankle sprain, has been limited throughout the week. We'll see what he's able to do today on Friday. Hunter Long didn't practice Wednesday, limited on Thursday. And then Brenton Strange, who was on IR for quite a while, is now back at practice as well. So, Jeff, I think we kind of, I mean, again, I'll reference the show that I did with our good friend Andrew Cooper yesterday. We both talked about it. Like, I don't know if there's been a more fun team from a fantasy football content perspective than the Chargers. Like, it is just this ever changing, like, tackles are in, tackles are out. Like, we got this guy breaking out. Now he's gone. And now we got this rookie tight end. Like, there's just, it seems like every week there's something to talk about with the Chargers because they just have this embarrassment of riches. And I think the thing now to talk about is that Keenan Allen is kind of pushed out of starter consideration. I've got him outside of my top 40 wide receivers this week, Jeff. I don't know where you land on Keenan Allen, but we're seeing a big change in how he's being utilized.
Yeah, we are. And I don't know. This has been a night and day offense here for the Chargers and some of these matchups. And You're 7-3. They're obviously a very good football team, but you're getting, every time you think that you're all in on the Chargers, you'll get a clunker of a game, and then when you're out, they get a better game. But Allen is a great point there. Moving to Trey Harris because they really like what Trey Harris has given them in the run block game. And I think with having Gadsden in at tight end, you're not having the classic Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh tight end at the run block scheme. And so you're leaning a little bit more on Trey Harris almost to be that extra tight end at the wide receiver position when it comes to running the football, especially with the injuries on the offensive line.
Can I throw a crazy comp out here right now? Can we kind of say that like Trey Harris is the Mark Andrews and Aranda Gadsden is the Isaiah Likely? We've got a little bit more usage going Gadsden's way, but it's almost like we're seeing Trey Harris like he's listed as a wide receiver, and we're seeing him play this like pseudo tight end role. And then meanwhile, Aranda Gadsden, who's listed as a tight end, is lining up in the slot and playing very much so like a wide receiver. And I think that's what I like so much about not just the Chargers, but like we're just seeing this all over the NFL. Like coaches are not shackled to any sort of positional restraints. Like we are seeing DK Metcalf lining up as fullback. Like we're seeing tight ends moving all over the formation. We're seeing guys lining up as fullback, moving out wide, and then coming in line. Like and the Chargers, I think, embody that more than anything else. That this is just the NFL that we live in. It doesn't matter what your position is. Like you're expected to do everything. We see Scott Matlock and these are like just moving all over the formation, doing crazy things, and it just makes the Chargers. I think that's why they're such a fun team to talk about because they're just really changing the way that the NFL is played.
Yeah, and it's fun because it's not what we expected. We expected a power run game with Najee Harris and Marion Hampton. Obviously, they're out of the lineup. We expected Greg Roman to be Greg Roman, and I said last year, and then I said this year that they're going to throw the ball a lot more than people realize because they've got a lot of talent at wide receiver, and Justin Herbert is very, very good. They very much believe in Justin Herbert, and we are seeing them throw the ball and Justin Herbert being very productive. If you believed in Justin Herbert, you've been rewarded so far this season.
So anything else on this one, Jeff? This feels like Omarion Hampton isn't officially back at practice, but we're seeing him out of the walking boot and he is like hanging out at practice. This kind of does feel like this might be the last run for Kamani Vidal because after this week, we've got the bye week. And then I assume that we'll see Hampton coming back after the bye week. So any, opportunities to go out, like if you've already locked in, Alfredo Brown and I talked about this on our show a couple of days ago, like if you've already locked in a playoff spot or if you are a contending dynasty roster, like this is the time to go out and see if you can get Omarion Hampton, especially if the guy who is rostering Omarion Hampton can't get through the next couple of weeks. Like if they need immediate production this week, if they can't make it through the bye next week, I think there is this kind of window that you can go out and still get Omarion Hampton before he comes back with a lead job.
Yeah, Vidal has been an every other week guy where it's been 124 yards, 20 yards, 117 yards, 30 yards, 95
so he's due
yards.
For a stinker.
He's due for a stinker, unfortunately. And I believe the Jaguars have been pretty good against the run game. So I think that's the bigger thing on this one. The Jaguars, if I remember, I should be looking at numbers, but have been pretty good against the run game. And Kamani Vidal, every other game seems to have a bad game. We're due for a bad game here. I think the Jaguar side, just seeing how the wide receivers shake out, seeing how the targets shake out with Jacoby Myers now on the offense.
Did you rank Brian Thomas as if he's playing this week, or do you have him out of your rankings?
I do not have him in my rankings this week. Last week I kept him in my rankings too long, and this week I've overcorrected, as I do all season long. Overcorrected.
I added him to my rankings last night after back-to-back practices. I feel like we might see him out there, but I did that thing that is just like basically saying, I don't know what the heck is going on here. We've got Brian Thomas Jr. ranked as a wide receiver 3. I've got Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers both ranked as wide receiver 4s, just saying like, I don't know. I don't know. Like one of these guys could score a touchdown. Like I think it's a matter of time before we see Jacoby Myers take over Parker Washington's role, but I don't know if that's going to happen this week. Like if Brian Thomas Jr. is out there, you kind of like need to get him in your lineup because the upside is so high, but we've been saying that all season, and the upside hasn't really shown itself yet.
So if you think Jacoby Myers is going to take over Parker Washington's role, how do you see the Jaguars wide receivers shaking out then?
So I say that because that's what Liam Cohen is explicitly said, is that they're kind of like ramping up Jacoby Myers, that they had him in the role last week where he was playing out wide, and that over the next couple of weeks, they want to teach him that slot role as well. So what I would expect, like once Jacoby Myers is fully up to speed, is that we see Jacoby Myers kind of playing the slot role, the Travis Hunter, the Chris Godwin in this offense, where he can move back and forth a little bit. And what I want to see is I'm sick of seeing Brian Thomas in the slot. That's not what he does. Like I want to see him out wide. And I think that's the expectation, is that they can just put Brian Thomas out wide where he can do what he did best last year, just kind of riding the rail, getting those deep shots downfield. I'd expect Jacoby Myers to be the slot receiver. And then we just see Parker Washington kind of gets rotated in on 3 wide receiver sets.
Yeah, because I thought it was interesting with the usage last week because they played Tim Patrick instead of Diami Brown. Right. And without Brian Thomas in the lineup. And I think, you look at body type, play style, I think they could probably saw it and said Tim Patrick is more of a stand-in for Brian Thomas than Diami Brown is. And Diami Brown seems to be falling out of the receiver rotation here. So I hear you on taking over the slot role. And I think that's natural. I think that naturally Jacoby Myers is a higher end slot player than Parker Washington is. But I do think that Parker Washington is going to be the wide receiver 3 right now. And the ball seems to find Parker Washington when he's on the field. And so that I don't know that I'm ready to relegate Parker Washington anytime soon out of the fantasy conversation. I think
I'll say we see that we talk about how expectations change all the time. Like, do you remember a couple of years ago when like Parker Washington first had his like big pop game and everyone's like, yeah, he's a late round pick, but he's got, the speed and all this stuff. And like people were so excited about Parker Washington. And now he starts like stringing together some good production and everyone's like, oh, that Parker Washington, like he stinks. They need to get him off the field. Like it was just 2 years ago that we were talking about this guy as like a buzzy late round pick that could end up like carving out a role for himself. And he did that. He carved out a role for himself and he's looking good. And now everybody is over it.
Basically, yes. I mean, it was only 2 or 3 years ago that Ramondre Stevenson and Rachaad White were the young backs that were demanding take over the backfield, and now they are the old codgers that are messing everything up. That's really the dynasty game. If you're going to play this microwave culture, the dynasty game, so many people will hold a guy until the moment before you actually should have him on your roster and decide this is not going to happen. And then it does happen. And because they moved off of him, they say, well, that's not real. And sometimes it takes players a while especially players that are not elite players, a while to get acclimated to the league, to understand how things work. And in Parker Washington, there's nothing that jumps out about Parker Washington in terms of athleticism, anything, but he's a football player. He's just one of those guys that just gets, I feel like I've never seen Parker Washington without dirt all over his jersey.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else from this one, Jeff? I guess the last question I have for you, we did talk about the receivers a lot, but Parker Washington or Jacoby Myers this week, who do you prefer of the two? I've got a slight lean towards Parker Washington. I expect Jacoby Myers to take over at some point, but I'm still ranking Parker Washington ahead of Jacoby Myers until I see that flip happen.
Washington here, I think, because the Chargers have been very good against wide receivers. And so that's probably part of it too. I don't know that I feel great about any of these Jacksonville receiving options but Parker Washington, I would have over Jacoby Myers right now until we really see that flip happen.
And if you're hurting a tight end, pick up Brenton Strange, even if he's not back.
I'd be hurting bad, I think, to pick up Brenton Strange.
He'd be hurting really bad, but there are a lot of people that are hurting really bad at the tight end spot. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Bears at Minnesota Vikings. DJ Moore was dealing with a shoulder injury, didn't practice Wednesday, was limited on Thursday. Roma Dunze, same thing, dealing with an ankle injury, didn't practice Wednesday, limited Thursday. Cole Kmet, limited, and then a full practice dealing with a back issue, and then DeAndre Swift also limited. If there's one thing I've learned, Jeff, it is that Ben Johnson is pretty liberal when it comes to just like giving his veterans days off and limited practices. We've seen this a lot with DeAndre Swift and DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. These guys pop up as early week DNPs and people kind of panic a little bit, and then they end up playing through it. So I'm not going to get too concerned about any of that. On the Minnesota Vikings side of the ball, we've got Aaron Jones limited with a shoulder and a toe injury. JJ McCarthy is on the injury report with a right hand injury, but he was practicing in full yesterday, so no concern that he won't be 100%. What's your major takeaway in this one, or something that you're going to be looking for?
It definitely, Vegas thinks it's going to be more of a shootout than I think probably fantasy thinks it's going to be at 48 and a half over under. We talked about this game quite a bit last night on the DFS show that should be coming out today. And I think that there's spots to like in both sides here. Bears side, it's Luther Burden is the guy that in every bit of content, everybody calls him a buy low and all these things, but he's that guy that whoever has Luther Burden in your league has been incredibly aggrieved by Ben Johnson all season long, and Luther Burden is the true number one wide receiver in the Bears. So it's like we get these sometimes where you're making content, you're looking at the usage, and you're seeing things shift in one direction, and you don't take into account that the person holding Luther Burden is convinced that Luther Burden is the number one wide receiver all
If
year long.
anybody's still holding Luther Burden going into this matchup, you can pry him from their cold dead fingers. They're not trading him away at this point.
Yeah. So I throw these things out because so everybody knows I'm picking on myself because I'm guilty of these things, because I look at what is happening with the Bears and I say, yeah, well, go out and buy Luther Burden. And then it clicks in my mind of, oh, wait a minute. Everybody holding Luther Burden has been convinced all year long that this dude is the number one receiver, just matter of time. So the slightest movement we get towards the actual relevance of Luther Burden is just going to lock those hands in that much harder.
And of course, he's still, rostered in dynasty leagues. And I think that he makes for somebody who could have like a really big year too, very similar to the JSN of it. And these guys who are kind of buried behind talented players as rookies, it doesn't mean they're bad players. It means that they're rookies playing behind talented veterans. Like we have seen this song and dance many, many times. And I think if there is a situation this year, or maybe DJ Moore gets hurt or Rome Odunze gets hurt, then we could see Luther Burden thrusted into a bigger role where he can be on the fantasy radar. But for now, with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Olamide Zaccheaus and all these guys ahead of him, not to mention Cole Kmet getting his and Colson Loveland getting his, it's just really hard to rely on Luther Burden. So yeah, the per route run metrics and the QB rating when targeted, like all of those things are really exciting, but I just don't see how it happens without an injury ahead of him.
Yeah, and Rome Odunze, we were both on Matt Waldman's roundtable this week, and Matt had a question about which player that's fallen off do you think is going to bounce back, be relevant all year long? And Rome Odunze was my call out there, and my argument is I don't know that Rome Odunze actually fell off. I think that
he just stopped scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, and they were still there, and he had two games. One was a weather game, but he had 2 games at 30 yards, and then went for 117 yards against the Ravens, and then he had that weird zero, that is a high-profile zero in a Bengals game that everybody went off on. And I think what you saw was probably a lot of people with conviction going into the season that Rome Odunze isn't that good based upon the rookie season, or that this Bears passing game, or Caleb Williams, and joked about it that while Caleb Williams was on a winning streak, nobody could say anything bad. And then the moment that he lost, then every single article that had been written for a month about how terrible Caleb Williams is gets published. I feel like Rome Odunze, it was a little bit of, I don't believe this mirage that I was seeing, because I don't think Rome Odunze is good, and because I didn't buy him this offseason and when he was potentially cheap. And I told you he was going to fall off. And Rome Odunze, I think, is a very, very, very good player. This should be, again, like I said, an underrated shootout spot despite all the concerns.
Yeah, I told you before we started recording that I was tightening up my dynasty rankings last night, and Rome Odunze is a guy that I really, really struggled. You can make an argument that he's up there as a top 8 receiver, right alongside Rome Odunze, or I'm sorry, right alongside Emeka Egbuka, but you could also kind of make an argument that he's outside of the top 15 and behind Marvin Harrison Jr. and Garrett Wilson and Travis Hunter. I think this, redoing my dynasty rankings last night really just showed me that there's a lot of depth at wide receiver. You've got your kind of top 5 that is just locked and loaded that you feel really good about. And then it just feels like there's this wide receiver 2 tier that runs from wide receiver 6 all the way down to wide receiver 20, where you can really just kind of make these guys pretty interchangeable. So I settled in Rome Odunze just outside of the top 12 because we've seen the upside. Also want to see what this could look like next year with DJ Moore potentially out of the picture. But I think back to this game, Jeff, the Bears and Vikings, I think we have clarity on both of these backfields. And I think that was, we saw DeAndre Swift miss some time. We saw Aaron Jones miss some time. And in the absence, obviously, we saw Kyle Monangai and Jordan Mason pick up the slack. But with both of them back in the lineup, we saw DeAndre Swift in clear control of the backfield. We saw Aaron Jones in clear control of the backfield. And we're starting both these guys this week as top 20 running backs, right?
Yes. And we like these running backs very much so. And it breaks in their direction. Yeah, the Monangai of it. I mean, Swift coming back off that injury and just dominating that backfield. I mean, you were all over it last week because you kept calling out, like, why is Monangai ahead in consensus ranks? This feels really weird. Like, what's going on here? And it was just a lack of, we see the young shiny thing, and he has a good game, so he has taken control of the backfield. And then the coach goes back to the guy that he knows and trusts and has led the backfield all year long.
I'm gonna touch the third rail here, Jeff, and say something that I probably shouldn't. That's going to get me in trouble. But
we're 45 minutes into the show. We're allowed to say anything we want now, Dave.
Yeah, we're also streaming to thousands of people on Twitter right now, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. But I was looking at the consensus rankings, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Kyle Monangai was ranked ahead of DeAndre Swift. And when I'm saying consensus rankings, I think people know who I'm talking about. That shift happened where Kyle Monangai moved behind DeAndre Swift, but it happened at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. Like, a lot of people at that point have already set their lineups. Like, I don't think that it is beneficial for people to be sandbagging their rankings and holding out, waiting for all of the information. The reality is a lot of people want to set their lineups on Friday and Saturday and then just wake up Sunday and play football. And all week, like I was talking about it internally, saying, like, this is unbelievable to me. Why is Kyle Monangai ahead of DeAndre Swift? And then 3 hours before kickoff, rankings land where they should. DeAndre Swift moves well ahead of Kyle Monangai, but how many people set their lineups on Saturday, had Kyle Monangai in, thinking that he was this top 24 running back when he just didn't perform that way? Like, footballguys.com. Our rankings are up to date all the time with all of the fresh news. We're not relying on hundreds of rankers to submit rankings to us for free. We have paid people who do it and stay on top of it. And that is what I'll say that is going to get me in trouble.
Most accurate ranks in the industry, but the accurate people wait until right before the games and then get copied off of. But neither here nor there. Justin Jefferson Justin Jefferson might be the very best buy in fantasy football right now. Everybody's convinced that Justin Jefferson has completely forgotten how to play football and radioactive, and the targets are still there. When the targets are still there and the player is as talented as Justin Jefferson, it is going to course correct. We saw course correction with a couple of guys last week. With Jerry Jeudy was like, the targets were there all year long. Finally has that good game. Nico Collins, targets there all year long. Finally does that Nico Collins game. Everybody's off Justin Jefferson now. This is a potential shootout spot. This is a defense that, I mean, you know the names of the Bears cornerbacks, Dave, because you're a Bears fan, but most don't know the names of the Bears cornerbacks anymore. And I think Justin Jefferson here is just the best buy that you can go out there and get in fantasy football right now.
You want to lead into the narrative a little bit? Did you hear the thing about Jaquan Brisker saying that he got in Justin Jefferson's head his first game ever playing against him, and he said that he made him cry on the field? Did you see this, Jeff? I think this is like some deep Bears beat sort of stuff. But there was a quote a couple of weeks ago where Jaquan Brisker was talking about how he's one of the best trash talkers in the league, and that he made Justin Jefferson cry and shut him down in the first game that he played against him. But the box score shows that Justin Jefferson went for 120 yards, and there's nothing in that game that shows that he made Justin Jefferson cry. I'm sure Justin Jefferson heard that soundbite, and I'm sure he's going to be a little bit fired up in this game. Last question I have in this game, Jeff, and I'm going to pose the question to you the same way I posed it to Andrew Cooper yesterday. Why aren't more people talking about J.J. McCarthy as a streamer in this matchup?
Because we've decided he's bad and it's gross. And
it's the same exact answer that Andrew Cooper had. Yeah, public perception. The reality is, like, he's rushed for 5+ times in 3 of his last games. Like, the Bears are giving up the second most rushing yards to rushing quarterbacks. They're giving up the 5th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy is going to rush the ball. He's going to throw the ball to Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones. The Bears defense is terrible. I got J.J. McCarthy inside my top 10 this week. I don't care. I've got him ahead of Joe Flacco, ahead of Marcus Mariota, all the buzzy streamers that everybody's talking about. I prefer J.J. McCarthy to all of those guys.
Yeah, and I mean volume very much there for
Yeah.
the Vikings wide receivers, Jefferson and Addison. I thought it was so Jefferson had his highest, I think it was his highest target total of the year last week, and also his lowest yardage total of the year. And then Addison was second highest target total and second lowest yardage total. But sometimes weird things happen. Jalen Naylor seems like just an interesting conversation
Yeah.
right now. The Spartan to Wolverine to Spartan narrative, the definitely locked in as the wide receiver 3, but not only locked in as wide receiver, the number 3 target option in this Vikings offense, it seems like, and which means TJ Hawkinson just dust. It seems like he's way too young to be dust at the tight end position, but it's just not there. And the numbers with Carson Wentz at quarterback, TJ Hawkinson about 6.5 targets per game. With JJ McCarthy at quarterback, it's 3 targets per game.
And why don't we look at the targets per game with Kirk Cousins when he was a plug and play tight end 1? And I think that's really the big difference here is now McCarthy, like I said, rushing 5+ times in all 3 of his last games. And the difference is with Kirk Cousins when he was there, rather than taking off and scrambling with the ball, he'd just say, okay, I'm going to hit TJ Hawkinson for his 3 to 5 yard gain in the flat. JJ McCarthy isn't doing that. And honestly, like I'd prefer JJ McCarthy to take off with his legs than throw to TJ Hawkinson, who has shown no after the catch ability at this point in his career. So yeah, TJ Hawkinson, like still holding on to him in Dynasty, but droppable in any redraft format at this point. Like he's not even giving us top 30 tight end production. Let's move on to the next game here, Jeff. Green Bay Packers, New York Giants. Romeo Doubs practicing in full after leaving last week's game with a chest injury. Matthew Golden returned to practice in a limited fashion. Christian Watson popped up on yesterday's practice report as a limited participant with this knee and hamstring issue, so something to pay attention to. We want to see him log either another limited practice or hopefully a full practice on Friday. Dontavian Wicks also ailing with a foot injury. He has been limited. And then Savion Williams as well. So, I mean, we're looking at like every single Packers receiver right now is dealing with something. On the Giants side of the ball, Darius Slayton has yet to practice with a hamstring injury, and then Jackson Dart is going to be out with a concussion. Jameis Winston is expected to start, and then of course we got Mike Dable getting fired. Mike Kafka is the new head coach for the Giants, promoted from within, so we don't expect any major changes here. But Jeff, people are so excited about Jameis Winston, but I think the problem is Jameis Winston doesn't have wide receivers now. Like we like Jameis Winston when he's airing it out to superstar wide receivers. I don't know if I feel quite as good about Jameis Winston in a matchup where he's going to be throwing the ball to an injured Darius Slayton and a Wan'Dale Robinson and a Theo Johnson.
Gunnar Olszewski, anytime touchdown. Let's go. But no, I think it's I think Wan'Dale Robinson, you squint hard enough, you could see a player that Jameis Winston could make relevant. And I think Theo Johnson could be pretty interesting too as a athletic player that can get downfield. I mean,
what Wan'Dale Robinson are we going to see? Are we going to see the Wan'Dale Robinson that we've seen for 90% of his career where he's just playing the short targets near the line of scrimmage? Or are we going to see what we saw in those last couple of games with Russell Wilson where he became a legitimate vertical threat? Because that's what I want to see with Jameis Winston. Like, are we going to let him air it out, and are we going to let Wan'Dale Robinson run these vertical routes like he did in college?
My gut feel is we are going to see the Wan'Dale Robinson that is playing against an angry Packers defense and that has shut down top receivers throughout the season and doesn't have anybody else to draw any other attention. Yeah. That is where my gut feel lands on this Giants passing game in this game. But Jameis Winston makes things fun. Jameis Winston creates fantasy goodness out of nothing. Jameis Winston, we need, after Spencer Rattler was stolen from our lives, we needed a little Jameis Winston here at this point in the season, I think.
So Tyrone Tracy, I think we're still kind of looking at him as like an RB3. If there's any sort of silver lining from this Brian Daboll firing, Jeff, maybe I'm big braining this a little bit, but Brian Daboll had just an infatuation with Devin Singletary, and we talked about this a lot. You know, he drafted him in Buffalo. They spent years together in Buffalo, brought him back to be a part of what they were doing in New York, and we would always see this like frustratingly annoying amount of Devin Singletary. I can't help but wonder with Brian Daboll out of the picture now, if we finally see Tyrone Tracy expand his role a little bit and be, you know, the clear lead back that we hoped he'd be. Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think that we still see Devin Singletary involved?
I think we still see Devin Singletary involved. I think that if Tyrone Tracy was good and running with the job, Tyrone Tracy would be good and running with the job. So that's kind of where that split comes down into
We did
this.
see that with Scadaboo, right? Like Scadaboo ran away with the job.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's Tracy's definitely had opportunity last year, and they went out and drafted Scatabo pretty high in the draft, and then Tracy had opportunity to begin this year and was injured and made some comments and was injured slash bench slash lost his job, and so yeah, I think that it's there on the table. Like you fired your coach. You're going with Mike Kafka here. If Tyrone Tracy can run with the job, you're gonna want the young running back to do that and to be your future at the running back position. It's just that if he could do that, he would be doing that.
For Jordan Love, I want to talk through this real quickly, Jeff. I'm fading him pretty hard in my rankings this week. And I already talked about like JJ McCarthy being a guy that I like. And I've got, Joe Flack, like all of the streamers that you'd expect I have well ahead of Jordan Love. And I know a lot of people drafted Jordan Love to be a plug and play starter. But when I'm looking at how banged up the receivers are in this matchup, and the Giants, for some of the struggles that they have defensively, they do have a pretty decent secondary. So I'm looking at, no Tucker Craft. Everybody else is banged up here. This to me feels like a game where the Packers are just going to lean on Josh Jacobs and give him as many touches as they can and try to get out of here without throwing the ball all that much. So looking at Jordan Love, like I've got him outside of my top 18 quarterbacks this week, which means that like outside of super flex leagues, I am not advocating to start Jordan Love anywhere.
You playing Geno Smith over Jordan Love?
That's a close one. No, I'm not quite there, but I do have, Marcus Mariota going up against Miami. I'd prefer him. Aaron Rodgers going against Cincinnati. I'd prefer him. But I do have that kind of cluster that I don't feel good about is Jordan Love, Jared Goff against Philadelphia, a tough matchup. Davis Mills against Tennessee, who can generate a pass rush, and then Geno Smith against Dallas. I've got all those guys lumped together in one tier that like I don't want to start any of those guys.
It's not Sunday night, so you don't want to play Jordan Love. He's only good on Sunday Night Football. But I will say on Love's behalf, he was dropping some dimes last week. And then those receivers, he had a defensive back playing wide receiver. And then he had Dontavian Wicks, who looked like he was auditioning to play defensive back playing wide receiver. And so
you also saw Christian Watson like have a perfect throw to him and just decided to play defense. Like didn't even try to catch the ball. Like I'm just going to make sure this defender can't catch the ball on a perfectly thrown deep ball that bounced off his head.
I think your read on it is right that this should be a game that the Packers win by leading on Josh Jacobs. Just get out there, and sometimes you just need to get a win. And coming off that Eagles loss, I think that they just need to get this win here. Probably ugly, messy game where Josh Jacobs scores 2 touchdowns. You're frustrated with every other fantasy option in this game.
Let's move on. We've got the Icy Bowl Part 2. Cincinnati Bengals at Pittsburgh Steelers. Not a whole lot of injuries here. Joe Burrow is back at practice, still practicing in a limited fashion. He is not going to play this week. We expect to see Joe Flacco out there. Joe Flacco, though, still dealing with this right shoulder injury that he has been dealing with for the last few weeks. Didn't practice Wednesday, limited Thursday. Expectations are that he will be ready on Sunday. Samaje Perine not practicing with an ankle injury. And then for the Steelers, nothing too crazy. We got Jonnu Smith getting a rest day, and that's just about it. Jeff, I think the first thing I want to talk about here is Samaje Perine not practicing at all this week, right as I dropped all of my Taj Brooks shares. Now we've got a Samaje Perine injury, which is going to put Taj Brooks as the RB2 in Cincinnati. Do you think there's any value here? Or do you think that we just see Chase Brown doing what he did last year, getting like 90% of the touches in this backfield?
That's what we saw last week, and that would be my expectation, that they go back to Chase Brown just dominating the touches in the backfield. They're comfortable doing that. They've done that last year. They did that last week. I would expect that would be what we see again. And it's everybody's on this game, and nobody was on the Thursday night game when they played the first time. And I feel like more than any other division, it seems like the AFC North, we get one shootout matchup between the teams, and we get one mess, just gross game between the two teams. Their defenses for this one might be so bad that they're not even capable of doing that. But I do feel like more often than not in the AFC North than other divisions, we get the one shootout and then the one clunker game. And the way that everybody's on this game.
And we've talked about it all year. Like the Bengals are just getting beaten like a drum by the tight end position. I mean, you look at like the fantasy points allowed by position, they're giving up almost 5 points per game more to tight ends than any other defense is out there. And like, yeah, you can say like that's inflated by like the huge Colson Loveland game and like the huge game that the Steelers had against the Bengals a few weeks ago. But that's it. Like that's what they do. They give up huge games to tight ends. So this is like last time we saw the Bengals and Steelers play each other. We saw like just wild stuff where like Darnell Washington is running routes through the B gap and like all sorts of weird, like 14 personnel and like just getting real weird out there with the tight ends. Is this one of those like where if you're looking at potential tight end streamers, you can look at Fryermuth, Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington? Like I think all of those guys are kind of in play to score touchdowns this week. I think if you really want to get weird with it outside of fantasy, like I don't know what the odds would pay on like those three for an anytime touchdown parlay, but like there's going to be a lot of tight end usage in this game from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and like always, we go from talking about how deep the tight end position finally is and all these things, and then all of a sudden you got the Tucker Kraft injury and you got some buys, and you're like, well, yeah, let's just stream any Steelers tight end in the tight end position because it's the tight end position and things change quickly in the NFL. I think you're right there on the potential is there for any of these tight ends, but you have to also acknowledge that the potential is there for it going to be the other tight end, not the one that you put into your lineup. So it's in play on both sides here. Again, it's this hypothetically on paper should be a massive shootout. Hypothetically on paper.
Yeah. And we talked about it a little bit last week that DJ Turner is kind of like quietly developing into one of these shutdown corners. And last time we saw DK Metcalf go up against the Bengals, he kind of got the clamp put on him. Like he had one 39-yard catch, and outside of that, just two other catches for 11 yards. So I think you're still starting DK Metcalf, but like the hopes that he would develop into this Devontae Adams 2.0 with Aaron Rodgers, not even remotely close. Like they are trying to get him the ball every now and then, and he's got the athleticism where he could score a big play, but he kind of feels like a Jameson Williams on a worse offense right now.
It really does. We had that stretch 4 games in a row early in the season that DK Metcalf scored a touchdown in those 4 games. And it feels like he had that massive first half against the Vikings, and it feels like it's just been nothing since that point.
And that was an island game. And
yeah.
we talk about it all the time, like the island game bias. Like everybody woke up begrudgingly early to watch that London game, and they said, wow, DK Metcalf sure is awesome in this offense. And outside of that first half of that game, he hasn't really done much.
Yep, exactly. And you're running it's the worst of both worlds where you've got an Arthur Smith offense who Arthur Smith is going to scheme up anyway to not have his star receiver touch the ball. And then Aaron Rodgers is just going to throw to the open guy. He's going to read the defense. He's going to get the ball out of his hands. And if it's not DK Metcalf opening up immediately, then it's not going to be DK Metcalf on the target there. And so worst of both worlds. And the potential for touchdowns are there. And again, hypothetically on paper, potential for a shootout between these two teams is there.
Yeah. And I'll just say what I've been saying for the last few weeks. If you can go out and buy Jaylen Warren, do it. Like he is quietly one of the few workhorse backs in the league. And we're already getting like Aaron Rodgers saying that like he wants him to get even more touches now. And then remaining strength of schedule, Jaylen Warren has the best remaining strength of schedule of any running back out there. So Jeff, you kind of said it, which I think you were very smart to say. Like the guy who rosters Jaylen Warren knows that he's a good player, knows that he's a workhorse, but still, like I'm aggressively like willing to move off of like some high end wide receiver twos if I need a running back, and like I would happily move off of my high end wide receiver twos for a guy like Jaylen Warren down the stretch.
Yeah, it is that again. It's similar to the Luther Burden conversation. It's that as content creators, we look at situations, we try to kind of think about everything flatline, and you say, oh, Kenneth Gainwell got a lot of snaps and the person Jaylen Warren might be nervous, but the reality is the person that understands more than that content creator or the other people in their league how involved Jaylen Warren has been in this offense is the person that has Jaylen Warren on their roster. So right. In a vacuum, it seems like a very good buy. It's just the idea that you're getting discounts on players, I think anymore in fantasy football, the way that everybody is so plugged in and so sharp on things, right, is more it's not a content crutch, so to say, but it's less of a reality than what you actually see in the trade market. Because when you go to trade for a player,
if you want,
you
got to buy high today. Yeah, that's the only way you're getting deals done.
When you go to trade for a player, you are buying the 110% version of that player, and I think so many times people want to buy the 80% version of that player. Nobody's selling the 80% version of a player.
It was funny. Again, I keep referencing the show I did with Andrew Cooper, but Jeff, I know, like, he's a good friend of yours as well. We love Andrew, and we were doing this show yesterday, and we were kind of talking about Jalen Warren trying to trade for him, and Coop is like, I got it. He's like, I think the perfect guy to trade is Brian Thomas Jr. for Jalen Warren. I sent that exact offer out, like my Brian Thomas Jr. for Jalen Warren 2 weeks ago, and the response was GTFO. For anyone who knows what that means, like, yeah, people are not giving up Jalen Warren, even if you can offer them an
Well,
underperforming
part of it
potential superstar.
part of it too, that flashback to that Algier quorum conversation on the way that running back has shook out. There's not been plug and play guys at running back. I mean, you got Vidal. There's been a handful of guys here and there, but everybody needs a running back in
Mhm.
your league. And so the idea that you can just go out there and buy a guy that's dominating touches for the Steelers on the cheap, everybody needs a running back in your league, and everybody's looking to get another running back in your league.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the late afternoon games here, Jeff. Or no, I'm sorry. We still have one more early game: Houston Texans at Tennessee Titans. Dalton Schultz didn't practice Thursday with an illness. No major concerns that he won't be ready, but something we'll be paying close attention to. Hopefully, he can get back at practice today on Friday. CJ Stroud is out, so we're going to get another Davis Mills game for the Tennessee Titans. We've got Calvin Ridley back at practice in a limited fashion, and then Chikakonkwo also dealing with a foot injury, practicing in a limited fashion. Jeff, let's start with the Tennessee Titans wide receivers. I don't know, get the growth. What's the saying? Like when you got a lot of work to do, like get the hard stuff done first. And I think like talking about the Tennessee Titans wide receivers is probably the hard stuff. Like, are we starting any of these guys? Like it felt like with Calvin Ridley out of the picture, we started to feel like okay about flexing Chimere DK and maybe flexing Alec Iomanor. But now I feel like with Calvin Ridley back in the bunch, this whole kind of wide receiver room is just radioactive to me.
And it's not only that; it's this matchup. You don't play players against the don't play Tennessee Titans
I,
against the Houston
I,
Texans. I
yeah.
mean, the Texans have really locked into the defense that we expected to see all year long. I know the Jaguars did some things last week statistically against the Texans, but this Texans defense has really been locked down. I think this is just a really difficult spot for the Titans here on that side.
There is one guy that I'm okay starting, Tennessee Titan. Let me hear. If there's one guy you had to start in this offense, who would it be, Jeff?
Tajay Spears would be the one guy in the offense that I would start.
Look at us. Look at us synced up. I knew that's where you're going. And that's because like he's an explosive player. He can always like the volume is going to be there. He can always rip off a 70-yard touchdown. We expect this to be a trailing game script where he's going to come in on passing down work late in the game as well. So I think he can kind of junk volume his way into a decent outing and maybe rip off the big play, maybe score a touchdown. I think he's the only guy for the Tennessee Titans. I hate to say this, but I think he's the only guy that's really on the fantasy radar this week.
He is. And you don't feel good about any Titans. I'm tired of talking about the Titans because I don't feel good about any Titans.
Let's talk about Woody Marks. We saw the Woody Marks 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and we said, that's it. He stole the backfield. And then we put him in our lineup the next week, and he did nothing. Last week, we see a big Woody Marks game. It looks like he took over the backfield. Are we stepping into that bear trap again?
I mean, it's a little bit of the commodity Vidal conversation. It seems to be every other week that we get Woody Marks going on here. But I was driving last week during the games, and I ended up on the Texans home feed and for that game, the home broadcast, and they were talking about how that offense it needs to be Woody Marks because
Yeah.
of the explosion outside opens up so many more things than the other options that they have in the backfield. And that's what we're just a dramatic shift towards the usage. And I think you can make the argument that it was the trailing game script, and that would be a fair argument to make. I mean, he's not on your injury report. I thought there was some injury concerns with Nick Chubb. Maybe he's completely cleared those, but I think when they're looking at where this backfield is, where this offense is in general, I think they recognize now, but with that offensive line and with the running back options they have, this is not going to be a run first football team. They're going to have to win through the air, and Woody Marks plays into that. Woody
Yeah.
Marks, Davis
I
Mills,
will
and Nico Collins is my favorite stack of the week on the DFS show. I think that when you're looking at the price that those players are in DraftKings in particular, and the potential here for just really an onslaught game script. Usually on my favorite stack, I'll have a bring back on the other team. I have no bringbacks for the Tennessee Titans. Just Woody Marks, Nico Collins, Davis Mills, super cheap quarterback. Makes some fun DFS lineups.
Yeah, I just double checked. I'm not seeing Nick Chubb on the injury report, but given the age, given the lengthy list of injuries that he has had, I think we could always just assume that Nick Chubb's probably working through something right now that a lot of younger running backs aren't. I think we've spent about 4 minutes on this game, Jeff, and I think that's about 3.5 minutes too much. You ready to move on to the next one?
It's worth noting Dalton Schultz injury status because
Yeah,
I
he's
think
been a
Dalton Schultz
target
had,
hog,
yeah,
like just gobbling targets for the last month and a half.
yeah, he had become the wide receiver too in this offense.
Mhm.
And when you're looking at structurally the way a lot of NFL passing offenses work, you kind of have Nico Collins working downfield, those in-cutting routes that he is so good at. And then you've got Dalton Schultz working underneath that. And that's the way that the Texans offense was flowing. Everybody's waiting for Jaden Higgins to take out, break off as the wide receiver 2 here. And everybody's favorite stash is Jalen Knoll. But I think you're looking at Nico Collins doing Nico Collins things. You were looking at Dalton Schultz being the number 2 wide receiver here. And then those other 4 wide receivers, Xavier Hutchinson, Knoll, Higgins, and Christian Kirk, kind of all playing intermingling, rotating roles. I mean, that hypothetically you can say it's trending towards the rookies. I think those veterans are going to be involved, but without Schultz there as the number 2 target, I mean, maybe it's Woody Marks is out of the backfield as the 2 target. I think maybe it's just a jumble of everybody else touches the ball a little bit. Nico Collins smashes and Nico Collins things.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Nico Collins is the clear wide receiver 1, and then everybody else is just kind of rotating in as the secondary piece. I was hoping to get some sort of clarity. Like, my expectation when we talked about this in the preseason was like, okay, Christian Kirk is going to be that guy to start the year. He's a veteran presence, and like maybe he holds that role all year long. Maybe we see the rookies take over. And what we've seen is just like Christian Kirk started the year hurt, and then he came in and he kind of got this role. But now we're seeing Jalen Knoll and Higgins are flashing too. And I think that there's nobody really reliable outside of Nico Collins. Let's move on to the next game here, Jeff. San Francisco 49ers at Arizona Cardinals. Now we are in the late afternoon games. Ricky Pearsall is playing this week. Brock Purdy is playing this week. This is fantastic news. We've been waiting a long time for this. Mac Jones is practicing in full, but he is going to be taking a secondary role in this game. Jeff, Ricky Pearsall, you're just putting him right back in the lineup, right? Like, given how much time he has missed, I don't think the 49ers would be playing him unless they were expecting him to be near 100%, especially with them declaring like early in the week, like we heard Thursday during practice, that he was going to be active. This isn't a questionable. This isn't a game time decision. This isn't a let's see how Friday's practice shakes out. They're saying he's active early in the week. I feel like, to me, that tells me Ricky Pearsall is going to be, playing pretty similar to the role that we saw early in the season where he was the team's wide receiver 1. Or am I just coping?
That's Cope. I don't know that I'm thinking that he could be the wide receiver 1 immediately coming off of missing 2 months of football, basically. But part of it, so available players are going to play in the NFL, like full stop. Like, I want that to be the context. Part of me can't help but wonder if the 49ers maybe got a little bit cute with some of the stuff of, starting out 3-0, and then you had that Mac Jones, Kendrick Bourne Rams game that nobody thought they were going to win, that they win. And if they didn't think like, yeah, we can be conservative with the approach of these guys coming back and these things, and we got command of this NFC West. We're the 49ers again.
We don't need George Kittle. We don't need Ricky Pearsall. We don't need Brock Purdy. Yeah, and maybe they do.
And then they go out and get absolutely annihilated by the Rams last week, and they say, "Oh, by the way, everybody's going to be ready to go again. Like, we're 6-4 now. We're 3-4 in our last 7 games. We got to start winning these games again. And by the way, you're going to be on the field, guys."
Yeah, and I get what you're saying a little bit. And again, maybe I am just coping here because I want to see it from Ricky Pearsall. And I was actually looking at my rankings. I lied. I do have Juwan Jennings a couple of spots ahead of Ricky Pearsall. And I think that's because like we don't know for sure. Like we know there's one very valuable receiver role in this offense. And that's the guy who's playing that X receiver role, the guy who can get deep downfield, run those crossers. And we've seen Kendrick Bourne do that. We've seen Juwan Jennings do that. We've seen Ricky Pearsall do that. I think when they have all 3 guys available, though, Ricky Pearsall is the guy that they drafted in round 1, the guy who was in that role early in the season. I think that's where they want him to see. And also, like, again, like paying close attention to the beat, there's been some weird stuff going on with Ricky Pearsall too, like where he's been playing basketball. He has been running on the field for weeks. And I guess what it is, the 49ers have this like strict rule that they will not allow players to return until they can hit certain speeds on GPS. And Ricky Pearsall, where you hear from Grant Cohn and other guys on the 49ers beat have said, like, Ricky Pearsall has looked healthy to us for weeks, and they were kind of confused why he wasn't at practice. So I think I don't know if this is like a very bad injury. I think it was just, a box that he failed to check in his recovery, but sounds like he has still been exercising and conditioning and working out and doing all that sort of stuff. So I'm not expecting a ramp up here. I'm hoping that he just gets like thrusted right back into that role as the Rex receiver.
Well, maybe that miles per hour dips a little bit after you get your butt kicked by the Rams, and you're 6-4 now. So
Yeah.
maybe that's going on. And you're saying that there's one valuable role. I thought you were gonna say that the slot receiver that's playing in the backfield right now for the 49ers, because
Right. Yeah.
we did Waldman's roundtable, and Matt wanted us to drop a controversial take, and that we think is going to prove to be right as the season goes on. And my controversial take right now is that Christian McCaffrey's not back at all.
No,
this
this
is
is
Christian
pure
McCaffrey
volume.
is basically dust at this point, and it is all pure volume struggle targets in the passing game is all we're getting from Christian McCaffrey right now. And this probably is the last great sell window out there in the dynasty space, the last great sell window of Christian McCaffrey's career. It's struggle targets. It's like the Devin Achane of last year, basically, without the explosion potentially being there. And, we did see that helps the island game spot against the Falcons, where Christian McCaffrey looked awesome and looked like Christian McCaffrey again. There's been nothing in this run game. And the concerning thing is I don't think Christian McCaffrey has had a 20-yard run all season long. And
No, he hasn't had a 20-yard run in like a year and a half. It has been a long time. You're good. You're good. Thanks. Sorry, my wife is bringing me a coffee right now. It's very early.
The real
in
football
Colorado,
guys
and I'm falling
MVP,
asleep.
Emily
The real
Clute.
football guys MVP. Yes, thank you, Emily. Yeah, it has been a down year for Christian McCaffrey, and the production has still been there because the volume has been there. But yeah, I saw this recently. I think the last time he has had a rush of 20 plus yards was like 2 years ago, like 2023 season. It has been a while.
Brian Robinson looks explosive. Like, and like, that's saying everything. Brian Robinson looks explosive. So it's there was no more noted plotter in the league than Brian Robinson, and you're getting him out here that Christian McCaffrey's making Brian Robinson look explosive.
Is this kind of the Kyle Williams thing, right? Like, everybody else has been getting the crap beat out of him for the last 2.5
Todd
months.
White
Like,
early in the season, like it's
and you see these guys come in. It's like Brian Robinson. He's like, I haven't done anything this year. Look at how fresh my legs are, or like fresh his legs are, and he just looks better than everybody else because he doesn't have that season long wear and tear on him. Jeff, last question I have regarding this game, and unless you've got anything else you'd want to talk about, we haven't really talked about the Cardinals too much. Trey McBride, tight end 1 on the week. Like, don't get cute. Like, nobody's benching Trey McBride, but like we've seen him with Jacoby Brissett just absolutely smashing. With Marvin Harrison Jr. out with the appendectomy, how high do you have Michael Wilson ranked this week? I'll give you a second to look at your rankings here. I've got him inside my top 36 just because the volume's going to be there. Zay Jones out for the season with an Achilles. Marvin Harrison out this week with an appendicitis. We know Trey McBride is going to kind of be the wide receiver 1 in this offense, but like Michael Wilson, just kind of on a last man standing basis, I think he warrants fantasy consideration in a lot of leagues.
I don't know that the volume's going to be there, because
Really,
I think the volume's going to be there for Trey McBride, and I think Trey McBride can get every single thing possible that Trey McBride can handle.
I mean, this could be an 18 target game for Trey McBride.
Yeah,
we could be looking at that sort of matchup.
Yeah, it is really. I mean, I'm sure there are much more better inclined numbers people than me that can tell you the actual numbers on it. But I do feel like it's a 50-50 proposition sometimes on these receivers like Michael Wilson that are kind of supporting receivers, that sometimes you'll get these games that, like, it's Kendrick Bourne of it. It's Kendrick Bourne goes off for 2 weeks in a row or gets all these targets on Thursday Night Football. And then 2 games later, Kendrick Bourne is still the nominal wide receiver 1 doing absolutely nothing out there. Michael Wilson's not a guy that has commanded targets throughout his career. I think the passing game here for the Cardinals, I mean, we're going up against a 49ers defense that's been decimated, that's really struggling, that hypothetically, yes, I agree, it's there for Michael Wilson. I've got Michael Wilson as wide receiver 43 on the week. I don't know that you're guaranteeing 7-8 targets here for Michael Wilson in this game, so much as I think it's just a lot of Trey McBride.
So let me selfishly ask you a start sit question. because I'm pondering one right now in my home league. Michael Wilson or Keenan Allen? Who do you prefer this week?
I'd go Wilson there
Yeah.
because I think that I'm not saying, no, don't hear what I'm not saying. Like, I'm saying that I don't know that the volume's going to be there, but the potential is there for the volume.
Right.
So
And I think that's it. Like he's a what the heck flex, as our Sigmund Bloom likes to say. And I think there is some upside here. Like he is an athlete who can make a big play or come down with a catch in the red zone. And I think that's kind of what you're hoping for here. I don't think he's going to be getting 12 targets by any means, but I could see 6 to 8 targets going his way with the potential for a big play or a touchdown. And that's better than you're finding on the waiver wire most weeks. So, we're worth talking about at least. All right, Jeff, let's go on to the next game here.
Just a couple more to dump it out there. Thoughts on the Cardinals. You mentioned the I haven't talked to Coop in a while, so I don't know if Coop's cool with me or not at this point in time. But I told you and our good friend Steph that a take that I don't know I can publicly put out for consumption.
We talked about that on the show, that I told him like how funny it was that you and I talked about this the day before he tweeted it.
the contingent upside of Elijah Higgins.
Mm-hmm.
The contingent upside of Elijah Higgins, and really just looking at this holistically, Elijah Higgins has been more involved the last couple of weeks. You're absolutely decimated at receiver. I mean, hypothetically, it would be Xavier Weaver as the wide receiver 3 here after Wilson, after Greg Dortch. Feels like a lot of 12 personnel potentially here for the Cardinals, and Elijah Higgins to kind of, I'll just say it, I think Elijah Higgins is available in way too many deep leagues right now, though, for the way that this could break over the course of the season. And the other part of it too, I mean, it was all garbage time last week for Jacoby Brissett. That first half of that game looked like Jacoby Brissett again. I've thought the narrative and the excitement around Jacoby Brissett has seemed very, very extreme relative to the entire body of work that we have over Jacoby Brissett. We see these backup quarterbacks come in 2 or 3 games, they're lighting the world on fire, and then everything falls off. This very much has the potential for every single wheel on the Arizona Cardinals fall off in this game.
You know what it is. You know the excitement for Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, everybody's sick of Kyler Murray and frustrated about Marvin Harrison Jr. not being Marvin Harrison Jr. And
Trey McBride not catching touchdowns. Yeah, so everybody's just like overcorrected and just like Jacoby Brissett is our savior. He's going to breathe life into Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. And yeah, he did for a quick little flash. Can he do it for the rest of the season? I guess we'll see. I don't even want to get into the whole like what's going to happen this offseason with Kyler Murray. We could save that discussion for another day.
It's 90s NBA point guard trade. It's Kenny Anderson for Stephon Marbury. We're going to get, there's going to be Kyler Murray for Trevor Lawrence, for Tua Tagovailoa, for Bryce Young. Just spin them all around and reset and just go with it.
All right, Seattle Seahawks at Los Angeles Rams. JSN getting a limited rest day on Wednesday, but fret not. He is practicing in full yesterday, and he will be good to go. Cooper Kupp practicing in full, dealing with a couple of injuries right now. Torrey Horton limited on Wednesday, and then a DNP on Thursday. Still keeping Torrey Horton stashed, keeping a light on for him in my dynasty leagues, but I think he's droppable in redraft at this point since they traded for Rashid Shaheed. For the Los Angeles Rams, we got Devontae Adams dealing with they're calling it an oblique injury, but I saw him reaching at his lower back in the game. So I think this is just I'm 34 years old. My body hurts injury, but he said he's going to be good to go. And Sean McVay said that if he says that he's good to go, he is good to go. So we expect to see Devontae Adams out there. And I think regardless of whether he has practiced or not, we saw this early in the year as well. Like he didn't practice all week and then he came out and had 2 touchdowns. So I've got no concerns here. Like you're starting Devontae Adams if he's active.
This matchup is an everybody's good to go matchup.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, this is the matchup of the week. It is arguably the 2 best teams in the NFC right now going up against each other for control of that division, for control of the number 1 seed potentially in the NFC. Great passing game potential matchup here. 2 great defenses is the thing, and especially run defenses against
2 hyper efficient offenses too. Like these are just great teams top to bottom.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fun clash of styles. It's going to be, the Seahawks are running the McVay offense. They brought in Darnold because he knows the McVay offense. They've Cooper Kupp. You got Cooper Kupp revenge spot here against the Rams. Cooper Kupp being the player coach because they know this offense. Well, who knows this offense better than anybody in the world? Sean McVay. So that you've got that fun element. just I think a lot of really under the radar talented defensive players in the front seven on both of these sides here. And I'm looking forward to this game.
We also got some Sean McVay coach speak, take it for what you will, this week, talking about Terrence Ferguson, how he has just like not done a good job getting Terrence Ferguson involved, and that he's an explosive player and that they want to see him a little bit more involved as well. Of course, that could be from the lack of production we've been seeing from Davis Allen, Tyler Higbee, and things like that. But I don't know. Maybe this is just me holding on to my pre-draft hopes, but like I still think Terrence Ferguson is a good player, and I'd like to see him step up a little bit, because outside of Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, there hasn't been much. Like these guys are gobbling up almost 70% of the targets, and then it's just kind of like scraps left over for everybody else out there. I still think it's more of a long-term play with Ferguson, but I would like to see him kind of step up as that wide receiver 3, because they just don't have anybody else doing that. And I say wide receiver 3, obviously pass catcher number 3, but nobody else has really taken that role. And I don't even know if there is a role to take behind Adams and Puka.
Yeah, this will be where Jeff says the thing that makes the thing everybody wants to happen. But we've seen no indication that one of these tight ends is going to take over the room. And
Right.
They like all 4 of these tight ends. I think they think all 4 of these tight ends are good caliber NFL tight ends, and they've rotated all of them through. So I'll put it, no indication that it's going to be Terrence Ferguson season. No indication that there's going to be a number 3 target in this passing attack, and no indication that it's anything but Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. So definitely Terrence Ferguson season never happened.
And also, I want to thank our friend Joey Wright. He is in the chat right now. So if you got any start sit questions, Joey does a good job tuning in on Friday mornings. We'll also helping out with our start sit questions. As I said on a show earlier this week, we got a lot of good tools over at Football Guys. Joey Wright is one of the best, and he's putting that to work right now in the chat. All right, Jeff, let's go.
Joey a tool, and I got stats though too for the Rams. Matthew Stafford,
let's see the stats. Yes,
the 9th quarterback in NFL history to have 13 touchdown passes in a 3-game span. He has 4 touchdown passes in 3 consecutive games. That is the 4th longest streak. One more will tie him with Tom Brady and Dan Marino for 4 consecutive games. Peyton Manning has the record at 5 consecutive 4 touchdown games in the 2004 season.
Wow. All right. So Matthew Stafford, good at football, in case you weren't aware. Let's move on to the next one here, Jeff. We've got the Baltimore Ravens at Cleveland Browns, AFC North. This should be a fun one here. Lamar Jackson practicing in full after a DNP on Wednesday that scared everybody, so no scares there. Rashad Bateman probably not going to play this week. He's been dealing with an ankle injury and is yet to practice. Justice Hill also not practicing, dealing with a toe injury. Keaton Mitchell was limited early in the week, but was a full participant on Thursday. Isaiah Likely, also same thing, limited early in the week, full participant on Thursday for the Browns. We got Harold Fannin dealing with a hamstring injury. He has been limited. We expect him to play. David Njoku got a rest day on Wednesday, but we expect him to play. And then Isaiah Bond limited, Cedric Tillman limited as well. So a lot of long injury report here, but it seems like everybody is going to be playing for the most part. I don't think we're looking at anything. I think the one guy who might miss would be Rashad Bateman, but you weren't starting him anyway. If Justice Hill has to miss, though, I think that opens an interesting question, Jeff. If Justice Hill misses, does that mean an expanded workload for Derrick Henry, or does that mean an expanded workload for Keaton Mitchell? What do you think?
So you're more plugged in this period of time to the fantasy hive mind as a whole, but is the Keaton Mitchell league winner conversation going on right now? Because Keaton Mitchell league winner conversation needs to be going on right now. Keaton Mitchell, the contingent upside of Keaton Mitchell is through the roof, and I think it's interesting to see. I mean, Justice Hill, maybe the injury was the entire explanation for Justice Hill last week, but it does seem to be trending in a direction of, for forever, we saw this split with, and you might not realize it was a split because in the actual touches, it wasn't a split, but in snaps, it very much was a 50-50 split between Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. And it has trended a lot harder towards Henry being more of the lead back the last couple of weeks. Maybe that's all game script, but it might be just Justice Hill kind of having his opportunity over the last year and a half and seeing what he is. And it's been Keaton Mitchell creeping in on Justice Hill. But if Derrick Henry were missed time, Keaton Mitchell should be the number one back in this backfield and is a legitimate difference maker in your fantasy leagues right now. He's available in a lot of deep leagues. Shouldn't be even, I don't argue that he shouldn't be even available in shallow leagues, but you're not getting the production right now to put him on the radar. If Henry's out of the lineup, he's going to be the guy that's getting double-digit touches out of the backfield. I think the way that the backfield is structuring is trending a little bit more towards Henry being the primary back here and then splitting that backup usage between those other two backs. And it's an offense, it's a team, 4-5. Nobody had the Ravens at 4-5. They'll be 5-5 after this game. The Browns are not going to beat them. The Ravens are going to be the 4 seed. They're going to take the AFC North. They're going to be the game that nobody wants to play wild card weekend. But right now we just haven't seen it put together here yet.
And I think that's the thing to take away here is that, we talk about this so many times, so many different backfields, right? Like if James Cook misses time, you can look at the snap shares while James Cook is healthy and say, well, Ty Johnson is the clear running back 2 here. But the reality is, like, if James Cook misses time, we're going to see an expanded workload for Ray Davis. And I think when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, you can say, well, Samaje Perine getting all these touches behind Chase Brown. But if Chase Brown were to miss time, I think we'd probably see a lot of Taj Brooks. And I think it's the same thing here. Like if Derrick Henry were to miss time, I don't think Justice Hill's role would change at all. He'd still be the passing down back. I think we'd see Keaton Mitchell come in and get a lot of the Derrick Henry work. And I think that's, a good conversation to have because I think you and I realize that, but I don't know if a lot of other people do. Keaton Mitchell right now. I think the hesitancy I have, and I don't want to even put this in the world because I feel like I'll end up jinxing it. Derrick Henry is very much so an Iron Man. Like he plays through injuries a lot, and he doesn't get injured often. So I think that's the band for Keaton Mitchell to get there is pretty narrow based on what we have seen historically. For the Cleveland Browns, Jeff, what are we doing? Like Jerry Jeudy finally got a touchdown last week. So do we feel good about putting Jerry Jeudy in our lineup? I don't think so, right?
The volume's been there for Jerry Jeudy. I think
it's been there all year.
You don't feel good about putting it, but the volume's been there for Jerry Jeudy. And I do think that sometimes in fantasy, we get first half players and second half players, and it gets to be some pretty severe splits sometimes. I think you can make the argument that the volume has been there for Jerry Jeudy. And if I were to be looking at a player that would be capable of having a strong second half of the year after a disappointing first half of the year, Jerry Jeudy's up there in the list of players that I think are capable. It's kind of what we saw last year. We saw Jerry Jeudy didn't do much of anything the first half of the year, and we wrote it off because of the Amari Cooper trade, but maybe in this Browns offense, maybe just the way that it's going, he's more of a second half player. And I think that that's where identifying some of these situations and buying a guy cheap before they start to string together weeks that make it a trend is where you want to be able to capture value in fantasy football. The opportunity's been there for Jerry Jeudy.
I also wonder how much longer we're going to see Dylan Gabriel starting, and I can't help Shedeur Sanders. I've not been the biggest Shedeur Sanders fan. I'm not crazy that we're even talking about him on this show because of how much coverage he gets already. But I can't help but think like maybe we'll see things open up in the passing game a little bit if Shedeur Sanders takes over, because right now Dylan Gabriel can't do anything except dump the ball off to his tight ends. I think that maybe we could see Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, some of these other guys. I mean, at this point, what do they have to lose? Like just put Shedeur Sanders out there and see what he can do, because Dylan Gabriel clearly is not it.
He's not it at all. I've seen enough. I think Browns fans have seen enough of Dylan Gabriel. Yes, let the Shedeur Sanders of it go. Thought it was interesting. Cedric Tillman immediately plugging in as the wide receiver too. Yep. I mean, Isaiah Bond, where that was the young unknown piece, and Isaiah Bond got a pretty ample opportunity and didn't do much of anything with it. So maybe there was he did, but maybe there was, outside of the off the field stuff, maybe there was a reason why Isaiah Bond was not aggressively targeted. There was a narrative that this is a day 2 guy the Browns got for free.
Day 3 guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we've seen some day 2 guys in some iffy situations, or day 1 guys in some iffy situations off the field still get drafted, and Isaiah Bond didn't get drafted. So
it was the timing of that, I think, was like that was like that story, for anybody who knows what we're talking about, that came out, I want to say it was like 10 days before the draft, right? Like it was very, very close to the draft. But then also, like, we had the whole Laramie Tunsil thing happened like an hour before the draft, and he still got drafted inside the first round. So yeah, I think you make a good point there.
Well, there
Anything else
was
on this one?
The Lyle Collins thing is where, like, did he get drafted? Maybe Lyle Collins did not get drafted, but there was that weird story right before the draft for him. I feel like I'm remembering he did not get drafted because there
Yeah,
was
he did go undrafted. Yeah.
so yeah, that was a guy that probably would have been a first round pick had
Yeah.
that not happened. So, I destroy my own narratives here sometimes, but
So we
you
talked through
did
it.
did you mention Isaiah Likely? I might
No,
have blanked during that
I
window.
did not know. I don't know. I said this a couple of weeks ago on the show, and I got a lot of pushback for it. I feel like Isaiah Likely is just an industry plant. Like everybody in the industry talks about him, and when you look at it production wise, there's been nothing since week one last year. Like this guy is Noah Gray essentially, but still gets a lot of buzz in fantasy. I mean, I've got him ranked as like my tight end 30 this week, and I know we've seen like the role grow ever so slightly, but we're seeing his role grow into what his role was last year when he was relatively non-productive. Yeah, I'm looking right now. I mean, I've got him in the same tier in my tight end rankings as Dawson Knox, Elijah Higgins, and Chigakonkwo. So pretty far off the fantasy radar for me.
So I hear you. And I also see Rashad Bateman out of the lineup.
Yeah.
And I see a team that has trended towards Derrick Henry taking more usage. And I see a tight end that has won down the field. And I can't help but wonder if the Rashad Bateman plug-in is not Isaiah Likely working down the field in a two tight end heavy offense that has playing two tight ends because of Derrick Henry, and Isaiah Likely kind of steps in as the vertical threat here in this offense, and the potential for some goodness might be there against what has been a very difficult Browns defense.
You could be spot on there. I just the way I looked at it, and maybe I just took like too simplistic of an approach here. I figured with no Rashad Bateman, Tylan Wallace was a guy that like I kind of put in like as a fill-in for where Rashad Bateman would have been in my rankings, then knocked him down a few spots. So I've got Tylan Wallace as like my wide receiver 60. I really think though, like we're just going to see a lot going to Zay Flowers. We're going to see them lean on the run game. We're going to see Mark Andrews get his looks in the red zone, and I think everybody else in this offense, which is good, like they do hit, and it's great for best ball. But I think like trying to figure out who is going to have that touchdown aside from those three that we really care about, it just seems like such a tough thing to predict on a weekly basis. But I think you could be onto something with Isaiah Likely, and maybe I was a little bit too quick to just dismiss you there. I'm sorry about that, Jeff.
You don't have to apologize to me, Dave. We're not proper gentlemen that are learned doctors.
All right, let's go on to the last game of the late afternoon slate here. Kansas City Chiefs at Denver Broncos. Isaiah Pacheco did not practice. We're hoping that he can get back at some point. Like he's hanging around the practice facility, but still not practicing. Xavier Worthy limited on Thursday after not being on Wednesday's injury report. So that's always, something to pay close attention to. We don't like those mid-week pop-ups. That being said, the Chiefs do get kind of weird with their injury reports, so we'll see what happens at practice today on Friday. J.K. Dobbins not practicing with a foot injury, and then Marvin Mims Jr., who has missed the last few weeks and opened up an opportunity for Pat Bryant. He is now practicing in full. We expect him to play this week. So, Jeff, I think we got to start with the running backs here. Kareem Hunt, guessing he's just another kind of, don't feel good about it, but you're putting him in knowing that this is a high-scoring Chiefs offense, and you're hoping that he can find the end zone a couple of times, right?
High-scoring offense, but this matchup, Denver loses J.K. Dobbins. Are we expecting that their offense is going to take off, and their offense has been horrible all year long? This feels like backyard. People have brought baseball bats to this fight here, that rock fight, the classic rock fight between the Kansas City Chiefs and Denver Broncos. Yeah, we got a good sit question here from the Smitty, who wants to know David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, or Rachaad White this week. I think Hunt, to play him in your lineup, you're hoping for touchdowns, basically. And, I think sometimes these rock fight games do end up shooting out, surprisingly. I think walking into this game expecting a shootout is maybe being optimistic. But I think when you look at Rachaad White, the way that Rachaad White is trending, and then David Montgomery not really being actively involved in the way that we traditionally have seen with David Montgomery. I think if you wanted to go with guaranteed volume, maybe Kareem Hunt would be the play there. If you wanted to go with upside, maybe one of the other two. I mean, Rashad
See,
White, I've
I've got
seen everybody
Montgomery.
run through this Bills defense.
Montgomery quietly, and I know you pay close attention to this. Season high snap share last week, and the production wasn't there, and I think it was kind of overshadowed by Jahmyr Gibbs just going absolutely ballistic. But I think Dan Campbell calling plays says like, hey, the two things that have been missing from this offense are the downfield explosives of Jameson Williams and the beating the snot out of you in between the tackles from David Montgomery, and that's I think why Dan Campbell took over play calling. So maybe I'm just we haven't gotten to the Lions game yet. We will in a little bit, but I am a little bit more aggressive on David Montgomery this week than I have been in previous weeks.
We haven't got to the Lions yet. We're talking about the Chiefs and the Broncos right now. We will talk about the Lions shortly.
Yes,
But
we'll talk at length about the Lions, a team with much to discuss there. But yeah, sticking here, Isaiah Pacheco, we were hoping early in the week that he'd be ready to play, but at this point, I don't think we can count on Isaiah Pacheco, right?
No, I don't think we can count on Isaiah Pacheco. I think it was frustrating to see everybody's waiting for the Rashad Smith takeover, and then you see maybe it's coming out of the bye because every single rookie does things coming out of the bye, but you see that opportunity there and his role not really changing much at all in that backfield. Seeing the Kareem Hunt bell cow backfield basically against Buffalo there. So maybe coming out of the bye, Rashad Smith does more things, but I think that we're probably a lot cooler on Rashad Smith than we were a couple of weeks ago when that Isaiah Likely injury first popped up. I think from what I saw, Andy Reid addressed Xavier Worthy, and it seemed to be pretty much the opposite of, you mentioned Jameson Williams, the coach is apologizing to Jameson Williams and saying, we got to get Jameson, Andy Reid was more like, yeah, Xavier Worthy's on the field.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be much of a priority when you definitely Rashee Rice being a priority and Travis Kelce. Dave, you blessed us all with saying on the timeline that Travis Kelce just looked like he was done, and then he goes off in that moment after that. So every Travis Kelce.
That was me coping. Travis Kelce was one of my most drafted tight ends this year. So, I started panicking a little bit early in the year, but yeah, he's looked better. Like he looks, I don't want to say like the Travis Kelce of old, but he looks worlds better than he looked last year. Like, I don't know if he's just conditioned or if he's, mentally there or what it is, but Travis Kelce looks much better this year. Then I think the thing with Kareem Hunt too, that gets lost in the discussion because everybody's so blinded by wanting these rookies and these young players to hit. Kareem Hunt has looked good in this role. Like he's doing exactly what he's done for the last couple of years. He's generating yards after contact. He's moving piles. He's mitigating losses. He's getting skinny through holes. Sure, he doesn't have the upside that he did when he was a rookie, where he's going to rip off the 80-yard runs, but he can keep the offense on schedule and marching down the field. And that, I think, is more important to this Chiefs offense than anything else. When you've got Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown and Travis Kelce and all of these pass catchers, you don't need a hyper athletic running back who's going to rip off big plays. You just need a guy who can keep the offense moving, and Kareem Hunt does that very, very well.
Davey, I think you hit every single cliche that you needed to hit, except for the keeping ahead of the sticks. I think is the key one that we want to go here with
all of the gritty veteran terms. Yeah, Kareem Hunt is doing them all. For the Denver Broncos, Jeff, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this question, but Troy Franklin or Courtland Sutton this week, who do you prefer?
Kansas defense. Again,
I keep
this
going
is
back to the
just
Coop show. I asked Coop yesterday, and he said it is illegal for you to ask me that. He goes, "We can't even have this conversation."
I just hate this matchup. Like these defenses are just so good, and both of these teams seem more than willing to play a 13-10 game, and so that's. I think when you're looking, especially PPR formats, you probably have to go to Franklin at this point. Sutton has been a player that has run pretty hot and cold through his career, and it seems like you'll get these barrages of touchdown games from Courtland Sutton. And it was only feels like just about this time last year we had the Island game against the Saints where Courtland Sutton posted a 0 and everybody was declaring how done Courtland Sutton was, and then he goes off from that point and it is like the wide receiver 8 throughout the rest of the season, but nobody bought into it because he had that 0 in an island spot. But I think it's Sutton, it's like the moment that you're done with him, it turns back around, but it does very much feel like the way this offense is flowing, Troy Franklin is the play if you really want any play on the Denver Broncos offense at this point in time.
And I think when you look at some of the bad games that Sutton has had this year, they've come against good cornerbacks. And I don't know if that is just, him getting shut down by good cornerbacks or if that is Sean Payton saying, hey, they got a really good cornerback here. Let's let Cortland Sutton and Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, Trent McDuffie, whoever it is, they're going to go off here and they're going to do their thing. And we're just going to play 10-on-10 football without Cortland Sutton and without their top cornerback. I don't know if this is a game plan thing or if it's like a skill issue sort of thing, but I can't help but think, Trent McDuffie coming in here, like he's a guy who we've seen clamp up some other wide receivers. So I have some pause with Cortland Sutton here. I have Troy Franklin as the preferred wide receiver in my rankings this week.
Yeah, that's the way I'll rank it as well.
And then the last thing we got to talk about in this one, Jeff, RJ Harvey, to the moon, right? League winner. Like this is what we've been waiting for. RJ Harvey is going to win your leagues now that J.K. Dobbins is hurt, or are we just going to get more Sean Payton shenanigans?
The other backs on the roster, Tyler Bidet, you've got Jaleel McLaughlin, you've got Deuce Vaughn, and that's it. If they had literally anybody that you felt like was capable of being that early down back, or we've seen the Audric Estime, or like just the gross guy that's going to get volume, I would be more into entertaining the Sean Payton shenanigans. I just don't see, outside of we're going to play 4 running backs and we're not really going to rely on one guy. If you're going to look at these players, I don't see how it's anybody but RJ Harvey that is the guy that steps into Dobbins' role. That being said, Dobbins was sitting in Dobbins' role, and I think it was 4th in the league in rushing, and he's like running back 28. So somehow it's like the most impossible thing in the world of he's going to be a top 5 running back in rushing production, but feels borderline relatively worthless in fantasy. It could be there for RJ Harvey and taking all the volume on, and you still could get a situation where you're disappointed and you're frustrated and you're blaming Sean Payton because it's not the RJ Harvey takeover season.
And that's my exact fear, is just that we're going to see RJ Harvey get plopped into J.K. Dobbins' role, which was a lot of low value touches. Like it was just a lot of carries, a lot of junk volume. And I think that's what we're going to see RJ Harvey get, because now this is crazy. How much ado was made about Harvey's small size. He's the biggest running back standing right now. Right. You compare him to Jaleel McLaughlin and Tyler Bidet and Deuce Vaughn. Now RJ Harvey is the big bruising back in this backfield. So I worry that he gets a lot of the early down work, and that if he can't score a touchdown, he's not really going to pay off. And I think that you see Tyler Bidet come in passing down work. And I think that we're going to see Adam Prentice come in on some short yardage situations like he's done. So I do think we're going to see a rotation here. And I don't want to say like, don't start RJ Harvey. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I've still got him inside my top 24. But I was checking compared to consensus, and I am just like extremely aggressive on my Tyler Bidet ranking. And maybe this is just me, trying to set myself up for potential heartbreak when RJ Harvey doesn't get the role that we all want him to get. But I've got Tyler Bidet as, a what the heck flex, a desperation play. I've got him like just inside my top 40 running backs this week.
Yeah. RJ Harvey was one of those that like litmus test for the if you're looking at the fantasy number relative to what's actually happening, because you had the Dallas game, and then there was a struggle game late. I'm forgetting about who they played after that, but he had 2 games where the fantasy numbers ended up great and nothing changed about his usage. Yes. And it's like, and like you see he's starting to take over, and it's starting to be RJ Harvey time, and it's like, well, he's playing like less than 20% of those snaps and short touching the ball 4 times a game. But yeah, absolutely.
It was a Dallas game. Yeah. He had 3 touchdowns against Dallas. And, in my.
Then there was a game after that.
Chat.
I could.
Yeah. Then he had.
If only I had resources that I could look up.
But yeah. After that Dallas game, I remember like in my home league group chat, the RJ Harvey manager was like, it's happening. Like the takeovers here.
The Texans game. The late in the Texans game. Like complete struggle time late in the Texans game too.
He had 8 touches in that Dallas game. He scored 3 touchdowns on 8 touches. Like nothing about the role change. He scored a bunch of touchdowns, which that's cool if you started him. But the reality is nobody started RJ Harvey that week, and he put up 3 touchdowns on your bench. All right, Jeff, we got 2 more games to talk about here, unless there's any final thoughts on the Chiefs Broncos.
Nope, we've thought way too much about the Chiefs and Broncos in a rock fight game.
It's a good game to talk about. A lot of good moving pieces there. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys and the Las Vegas Raiders, though. I think nope. Out of schedule. We're on the Lions now. I had those flip flops. All right, Lions at Philadelphia Eagles Sunday Night Football. Sam Laporta has yet to practice this week, which weirdly enough nobody is talking about. Like, I still see Sam Laporta is ranked as a top 6 tight end. It sounds like he probably isn't going to be playing this week. So if you are a Sam Laporta manager, definitely pick up a pivot option because he might not be available. And also with the Sunday Night Football, if he's a game time decision, like you might have to make that decision before then. So I'd go out and pick up a backup now if you can. As for the Eagles, all of their fantasy relevant players are healthy, but there's still a lot to discuss with the fantasy relevant players there. Jeff, I think we got to talk about the huge change that we saw last week. Dan Campbell took over play calling, and Jameson Williams had his best game of the season. David Montgomery saw his highest snap share of the season. We kind of alluded to this earlier, but I love that Dan Campbell did this, first of all. Like, the team is 5-3, sitting atop the NFC North, still one of the better above average offenses in football. And Dan Campbell was still able to say, like, no, this isn't the offense that we've had for the last couple of years. Like, we don't have the explosives. We're not doing what we should. And to take over play calling when you're sitting first place in your division, not many coaches are going to have the cojones to do that. And he did. And this offense immediately looked like the Ben Johnson offense. So are we expecting, I don't know if Dan Campbell is going to maintain play calling or not, or if he was just showing John Morton, this is how you do it. But I have a lot more faith in Jameson Williams and David Montgomery and just the entire Lions offense than I did previously.
It was Ben Johnson running the Dan Campbell offense.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
So, there's a reason why Dan Campbell's Dan Campbell, and there's a reason why a coach like Sean McDermott is Sean McDermott. And that's my opinion on Dan Campbell, who I think might arguably be the very best coach in football. And I'm a big Dan Campbell fan.
My new take is that we shouldn't just be talking about Dan Campbell as the best coach in football. We should just be talking about him as like one of the best American men, like just in general. Like, Dan Campbell is awesome.
He is very much awesome. I think Jameson Williams, the John Morton, was probably falling into the lazy analyst trap of like seeing just Jameson Williams' speed and utilizing him on 9 routes, and that's not Jameson Williams' game. Williams' game is a player that can create separation quickly, get the ball in his hands, allow him to build momentum and kind of process with the ball in his hands and attack defenses that way. And I think that Dan Campbell knows that and recognizes that and made that change. And I mean, you talked about Jerry Jeudy, these players that over the second half of the year that can really flip around. Boy, I know we were probably the 2 most aggressive bag holders of Jameson Williams in the fantasy industry. So maybe we're just trying to make ourselves feel better. But
there's no probably there. We are. Yeah.
At the same time, Dan Campbell takes over and recognizes that Jameson Williams was being used not in the way that Jameson Williams would be used, immediately utilizes him in that way, goes for 100 yards in the second half of this game. Jameson Williams takeover season is here. My hope is a difficult matchup against the Eagles here potentially, but at the same time, I was a little bit surprised about the over-under in this game when I first started looking at this game, because I do expect a shootout on some levels, but over-under total is a little bit lower than I would have thought it would be.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with Jameson Williams. So many people think that he is just a deep threat, but like if you watch what he does, I feel like his best plays are when he sells the deep route and then just hits the stop button. Like, his breaks, like he just comes to a screeching halt, and then you'll see like the defender is just, he gets 5 yards of separation, and he's just there on an island. We also see those crossers, which Jared Goff said like that is a cheat code in our offense, and you saw it. Like, I don't know why they haven't been running those much, but like I remember against the Bears game, like they just ran this little crosser where they just get the ball to Jameson Williams 10 yards off the line of scrimmage across the middle of the field, and then he gashes for a 66-yard gain. Like, he can do so much more than just run. And don't get me wrong, he runs the 9 route really well too. But like, I think this is what we're going to see more of going forward now. And I hope that whether it's Dan Campbell calling the plays or John Morton calling the plays, either way, like they've seen that when Jameson Williams is doing what he does, then it opens up the underneath stuff. It softens the boxes up, which means Jahmyr Gibbs can have more big plays. I mean, like, I don't want to say he's the most important part of this offense, but I think that he is a very, very important part of this offense to get everything else falling into place.
Speed can be utilized vertically and speed can be utilized horizontally. And people, and John Morton was utilizing the speed vertically for Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams is a horizontal speed player that could become a vertical speed player. And that creates so much stress for the defense with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta working off of that.
Squeaky wheel game for AJ Brown.
It's either a squeaky wheel game for AJ Brown or it's AJ Brown's not going to be here anymore game for AJ Brown. Basically at this point, because it's everybody. I see everybody wish casting AJ Brown as the number one receiver for Josh Allen after this year, but Howie Roseman, he's going to trade him for Brian Thomas and get 7 years younger at the position and start to put a bug in Malik Neighbors' ear on, you want to do what Saquon did. And, his college teammate there for Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. But no, it's, definitely seems like this should be squeaky wheel game. I mean, both Kevin Patullo and John Morton, being a play caller in the NFL is really, really a hard thing to do. And can't help but wonder if, Nick Sirianni sees this matchup against Dan Campbell. Nick Sirianni, an offensive mind of his own, doesn't get a little bit of inspiration from Dan Campbell and say, I'm gonna do some things here, and we're gonna get our guy going here. You would think if the Eagles want to be their optimum self, AJ Brown is a key part of that.
I got to pull up this stat, Jeff. I'm not sure if you saw this tweet yesterday. Brendan Deeg tweeted this out. AJ Brown has only run 14 crossing routes this entire season. That ranks 138th among wide receivers. So we talk about it like these crossing patterns are a cheat code. Like we see the Shanahan system uses them, the Kubiak system uses them. We talk about this with Jameson Williams using that speed horizontally. And they have just decided that AJ Brown is best. If we're just going to pin him outside the numbers, he's going to stay on the sidelines. It's not how he should be used. Like he's one of the best wide receivers in football, and they are just grossly misutilizing what he should do. So, as our Cecil Lammey likes to say, pressure can create diamonds, and it can also burst pipes. And there's a lot of pressure right now on the Eagles to figure out what they should be doing with AJ Brown. I think we hit all of the talking points here, Jeff. Anything else that you'd want to discuss about this game?
I think just moving into the next game, if you've got Sam Laporta here and you do not have a second tight end option because of when this game is and looking at the other tight ends that would be involved, I would expect that Dallas Goedert, I would expect that Jake Ferguson, and definitely would expect Brock Bowers to be rostered in your leagues. Michael Mayer might be.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going there.
If you have Sam Laporta, not Brock Wright, I think that might be the kind of get out of jail free card. Maybe I need to wait and see on Sam Laporta. I don't have another tight end. I need somebody I can put in here. I think Mayer is going to be the guy that you're going to want to stash in that situation.
So let's flip over to that game, Dallas Cowboys at Las Vegas Raiders, Monday Night Football. And yeah, we saw a huge change. Jacoby Myers out of the picture, and this team just opted to play out of base 12 personnel. Like Michael Mayer was not coming off the field on passing downs. Like there were a lot of times where I saw the ball in the air, thought it was going to Brock Bowers, and I was like, nope, that's Michael Mayer out there again. Like he is just becoming a full-time player now. Let's talk about the injuries real quickly here. Tyler Lockett is limited with a knee injury. All the Cowboys are healthy, so not a ton to discuss there. But let's talk about Tyler Lockett. And I hate that we have to talk about Tyler Lockett in the year 2025, but here we are. Tyler Lockett requested his release from Tennessee. Tennessee granted it, and he signed with his buddies in Vegas. He's playing for Pete Carroll. He's playing with Geno Smith, and we see him immediately in his first game. Leads in targets, leads in receptions, leads in yards. Please, Jeff, tell me that Tyler Lockett isn't going to be the number one receiving option on this Raiders team.
Well, Brock Bowers is the number one receiving option on this Raiders team. So
he wasn't last week.
Sometimes when you are looking week to week and you look at something, there could not be a bigger difference in the NFL right now from going against the Denver Broncos defense to going against the Dallas Cowboys defense.
Right. Yeah.
So there's that. The who did the Titans play the week before Tyler Lockett asked for his release?
I don't remember. I'm trying to look right now. Was it the Raiders?
They played the Raiders.
Yeah, so probably like that post-field handshake, and Pete Carroll was like, "Hey, come to Vegas, and we'll get you a lot of targets." Yeah, something like that. Is that what you're insinuating?
Yes. I think reconnecting with Geno Smith here. I think the rookies that everybody wants it to be the rookies. I get it. I think that they have had more than ample opportunity for that to be the rookies. And Trey Tucker, the conversation around Trey Tucker was that he reminded Geno Smith of a lot like Tyler Lockett, and he reminds Geno Smith more of Tyler
Yeah.
Lockett
It
than
makes me
Trey
sick.
Tucker does.
I mean, that was what I was saying. I was like, Trey Tucker is on the Tyler Lockett career trajectory. Like first 2 years, nothing but a deep threat. And then what was it? I think it was coming out of week 6 or week 7. I did like a deep, like in-depth film study on Trey Tucker. And I'm like, this guy's developing into Tyler Lockett in this offense. Like he's the chain mover. He's running these show, like he's doing it. And then I get really excited about Trey Tucker and they replace him with who I don't think is a better player, but and that's the other thing. I don't know if you saw it this week, but like Trey Tucker, they were asking him, and he's like, "I'm ready to step up and be the wide receiver one without Jacoby Myers here." He should be the wide receiver one, and Brock Bowers should be the focal point of this offense. But I just can't help but get concerned that Pete Carroll is just going to want to feed targets to his old friend Tyler Lockett, and he's not going to come off the field, and he's got that rapport with Geno Smith. So I'm not saying to start Tyler Lockett this week, but what I will say is that in these like deep NFFC leagues that I'm in with 20 plus roster spots, I picked up a lot of Tyler Lockett this week just to kind of see how the situation plays out.
Yeah, I'm racing here because I want to see the chart for Trey Tucker, because my assumption, what I assume is going on for
He was
Trey
back to being like more of a downfield guy. He was not getting the short and intermediate looks that we liked anymore with Tyler Lockett there. Tyler Lockett took all of that, and Trey Tucker went back to being just a field stretching outside receiver.
Because you need that. You need somebody that can stretch the field vertically, and when you
So they
don't
drafted Dante
have
Thornton,
any,
isn't it?
well, I think Dante Thornton has had ample opportunity to be a relevant player in the NFL. And yes, I mean, sometimes it takes development, and sometimes guys are drafted where they were drafted for a reason. And sometimes Dante Thornton gets drafted by the Raiders because Davis is running the Raiders, and he is the biggest, fastest wide receiver in the draft. And I mean, he had ample opportunity at Tennessee to be a super productive receiver, and Oregon before that. And when I did the rookie guide on Dante Thornton, everything, it was 2 plays. It was either a vertical route or he would catch a screen, and it would be nobody on the field can keep up with him. He's absolutely gone. Not a single amount of nuance in his game, and that doesn't really play well at the NFL level. And so I think that they saw him early in the season as that guy that could be that, and especially in camp, his physicality probably stood out. And then now you get the bullets are real. Defenses are actually covering you. This guy can't get open. We need to have Trey Tucker as the vertical threat so that we can have things open underneath for these 2 tight ends and for Tyler Lockett.
Talking about the Dallas Cowboys, Jeff, is there anything to even talk about here? Starting CeeDee Lamb, you're starting Jake Ferguson, you're starting George Pickens, you're starting Devontae Williams, you're starting Dak Prescott. We know this is a clean offense at this point. Like there was always kind of the discussion of who the wide receiver 2 was, that we'd see random guys step up here and there. I think with George Pickens there, it answers that question for us, and we know where the targets are going. Like I don't this is a clean offense. I don't think there's much to talk about. They have no injuries right now. We know where the targets are going. We know where the carries are going. We know Dak Prescott's good. We know this is a good matchup. Fire up your Cowboys. It's as simple as that, right?
The biggest thing to talk about is Jaden Blue being he was a healthy inactive.
Healthy scratch. Yeah. Malik Davis, I've got him. I mean, I'm ranking it as if Jaden Blue is just done and Malik Davis is the RB2.
Yeah, and I think that when you're looking at your deep dynasty league or your deep league that you might be in, we know the value in backup running backs. And I think the overwhelming industry consensus is that if Javonte Williams were to go down, that Jaden Blue would be that guy. It does not seem at any indication at all from this coaching staff that they have any level of trust in Jaden Blue. It might be Phil Maffa, it might be Malik Davis in that situation. But I think that that's where, when you're being proactive and trying to win the waiver wire, trying to look at who might be available in your deep leagues and maybe even some of your shallower leagues. Right now, it seems like Malik Davis would be the backup Cowboy running back to have on your roster.
You know how rare it is for coaches to like speak poorly about rookies, and like Brian Schottenheimer has not said anything positive about Jaden Blue. It has been like he needs to work on his consistency. Like he's just not there yet. If I had coaches coming out and talking poorly about a rookie, like that guy is not going to be fantasy relevant. Like, unless maybe this is like a first round pick and like, getting really into like the X's and O's and they're like dissecting what he can improve on. But like, this is a day 3 pick who has not done anything special on the field so far this year. Coaches are talking poorly about him. Healthy and active, what, like 5 or 6 times already this year. I think it's, I don't want to say it's over like his entire career, but I think for this year, there's almost no path to fantasy relevance for Jaden Blue.
The Gucci cleats is like everything. Like that's you
Sums it up well.
Practice, and then you have to miss practice because your shoes are hurting you.
Yeah.
There's sometimes a guy. Sometimes you can assume a guy is a knucklehead, and sometimes a guy will say, "I am a knucklehead," and Jaden Blue is saying, "I am a knucklehead."
Well, Jeff, we did it. Just over 2 hours today. I thought we were going to get under the 2-hour clip, but we failed to reach that. Any final thoughts on this week before we sign off today?
I think just looking holistically and looking, we're far enough into the season where guys that struggled the first 4 games have turned it around. Like Jalad McConkey turned it around after being slow the first 4 games, or Drake London went from being pretty quiet the first 4 games to being the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I can't help but feel like maybe we're out of that. We're definitely out of that second window. Maybe we're into the it hit me last week of like, it seemed like the industry wide like realization about how good Drake London has been, or these things like happen, or how good Lad McConkey's been happened, which means is telling me that we're in the next window and we need to be looking for the next guys that are going to be taking off. And that's why I'm pointing out Jerry Jeudy through the show, or pointing out Jameson Williams, or pointing out Nico Collins, of just continue to remain vigilant, continue to look at, don't count the last 5 games as gospel necessarily. Maybe look at 2-game sample, or see where things are trending. Try to read where we're going to end up in the next window, because it does feel like there's like these inflection points throughout the season, and it feels like we've shifted into the next window. Once everybody realizes what happened in the last 4 or 5 games, it's already like the other thing has happened now.
Absolutely. And Jeff, you do a great job doing that with your target share reports and your bell cow reports, where you're looking every single week at the usage for wide receivers, the usage for running backs, trying to read the tea leaves and seeing where these are trending. So be sure to check that out if you're listening to the show and you haven't already. And also, as I ask at the end of all of these shows, if you made it this far into a 2+ hour episode, you are one of our most rabid listeners out there. Let us know by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, please. It is the best way to help this show grow. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Either way, all feedback is welcome. Apple Podcasts, just leave us a review there, and it really, really helps us tremendously. I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in. Best of luck this week, and we will see you next week.